going on, everybody? Welcome to tonight's broadcast of the Aegis Champions League. We are coming at you with a lower round 2 of the playoffs, where our 12 final teams will be cut on down to 8, featuring ISU up against Peak Performers as our chosen match for the mainstream of the week. My name is Gordo, and I am joined by special guest Shivy this week. Shivy, welcome on board. TDS struggling with some power issues tonight, but Shivy, oh so graciously stepping on in. How are you doing, man?
Doing good. I'm not just an Ole Miss co-streamer. Guys, I actually am a caster. Or surprise, surprise. So always fun to fill in. And Gordo, this will be actually our first cast together, which is kind of crazy considering the paths we've taken. But I'm excited. You guys at ACL already have a better format than Worlds and potentially most of the other tournaments that are in the ecosystem. So, I mean, this is the most robust way to find out who the best team is. I think ACL and the tournament format you guys have crafted, I don't think anyone can be mad at the results, right? Maybe you draw a couple bad matches here and there, but you definitely have a chance to redeem yourself, which is what both of these teams are trying to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the group stage could draw a little criticism here and there, and that's how you know you've made it, when people are complaining about the format. But the playoffs, no complaints here. Full double elim all the way, full fearless as well. So going to get to see plenty of champion diversity as we get on in. And two of some of the top teams in the league, both coming out of Demacia, going to be facing off in a rematch from the regular season tonight. Let's introduce these squads, starting on off with Illinois State University, who will be taken to the blue side to start things off. It's PCL, Music, Meslo, Fatikon, and Barlow. They did play a couple of playoff matches earlier with Makel in at AD as well, but we do assume it is going to be this normal starting 5 tonight, Shibby.
Yeah, and this is one of the earlier rosters that got announced when the kind of the CLOL shuffle that always happens after every year when NACL kind of settles out and CLOL is done. This is one of the rosters I saw that was announced pretty early, and I love that ISU kind of like get their players, they lock them in, and the big pickup for me was Music. I'm sure you guys on the Salt Mine Pod and on Aegis have talked about this extensively. I've loved Music. I've loved him as a jungler. I think he did really, really good with Blue Water this year, and kind of, you know, exceeded expectations, and kind of pairing him up with players like Meslo, like Barlow, who have been within the ISU system, also having a draft coach or a strategic coach like Command Attack there, I think that just adds another layer of complexity to this ISU roster that, quite honestly, might be in contention for a top 8, if not top 4 spot in the ensuing CLOL year.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sold on this team originally when it came time for seeding, as many people weren't, as evidenced by where they end up seeded in the group stage. But they proved us all wrong with an 8-0 group stage, 16-3 game record, plenty impressive there, and an easy claim to the first seed up until they ran headlong into Piltover 3 seed Guangdong Flying Tigers just last week and got knocked down to the lower bracket in a 2-0 fashion. So a bit of a surprise there for them, and we're going to have to see how they react to that, as they have just suffered their very first loss of the ACL season.
Yeah, and GFT, the Guangdong Flying Tigers, a team that has been categorized as everyone's worst nightmare to draft against. I think Quest does a remarkable job understanding his players and busting out these wacky strategies. And, you know, not to be outdone, Command Attack definitely does have his own innovative strategies, picks that he's willing to bust out for his players here and there. But yeah, I think Guangdong Flying Tigers, kind of the Cinderella story, if you want to call it, or the dark horse of the ACL this split. And I'm interested to see how they match up against Ole Miss later on somewhere in the bracket. But yeah, I think ISU, I think it's a bump in the road. I think I fully expect this team to make minimum top 4 here, but they do have to make it through the Peak Performers, who, kind of like you mentioned when we were talking about it, have a notion to kind of kick it into a different gear with some of the players they have.
Absolutely. So let's check on out the Peak Performers roster as we move on to their opponents today, who want to make sure there's not going to be any more ISU matches in the ACL. It is old ACL favorites across the board: Alorum, Kitsuo, Robbie Bob, Sage Wabe, and then that down there in the bot lane is Dardoch. He's going by 3005 today. So we will be checking on out how this squad's going to be able to do. And Alorum and Dardoch, and Robbie Bob as well, definitely have a history of some really, really good lower bracket runs in the Aegis Champions League, culminating all the way in championships.
Yeah, this you could just call this UST sister team if you really want to throw it back here. You got a Lorem, Robbie Bob, like you said, Dardoch in the support role this time, and I think one of the more exciting players, someone that I've had the privilege of following for a very long time since kind of his foray into the competitive scene, is Sage Wabe. I think this guy has had such a nice rise as a prominent AD carry prospect, right? He was so good on Pulse. I think he was really good in the collegiate ecosystem in a region where, you know, typically you don't get to see too many stars. And I think Sage Wabe, the X factor, in my opinion, when it comes to, you know, carrying a game, understanding what he needs to do to win the game here. I know Alorm, I know Robbie Bob, I know what Dardoch can do. These guys are like known factors, if that's how you want to call them here. And I think Sage Wabe definitely going to be the difference maker here, as well as I am getting reports that Fatican might not be playing for ISU. So this is definitely where you want to leverage your advantage here. Sage Wabe and Dardoch should have an advantageous bot lane matchup if ISU are playing with a different bot laner.
Yeah, it does sound like it's going to be Makel into the bot lane for ISU, who did play out a lot of the regular season with Gentle Hearts and had himself a very solid ACL split so far. So definitely going to be a player that has some respect to him and is going to be filling that role in those shoes very effectively, but definitely not the player that Fatican has been so far, who I think has been a big surprise throughout this ACL regular season and throughout some of the CLAW preseason as well, in just how good he has been since arriving to the North American scene. So Makel coming in bot lane might give us a little bit of hesitation, and I think we can confirm that that's going to be the case, because Music is saying it in Twitch chat, so that's coming straight out of the Hecarim's mouth. We definitely are going to be expecting Makel to be making his appearance here tonight.
Yeah, and you know, you mentioned it before, you will talk about it consistently, the full Fearless format for ACL and in these playoffs. I mean, he really gets to shine when we get to that best of 5 portion, but even in the best of 3, you've already seen a lot of coaches, a lot of teams take advantage of using these different champions as these sort of draft pieces or resources. Right now they have an inherent value to them, which is what I love seeing from teams, and how they pick and choose. Kind of, do they overload blue side or they overload red side with a bunch of OP picks and not have that available for them for the next 2 games here? ISU on the blue side, peak performers on the red side here. I think the teams that have mastered Fearless are the teams that have multiple blue side flexes. I might be a little biased, but I think teams that can have multiple blue side flex picks, things potentially like we saw previous seasons, the TF potentially going the top side, or, you know, Ole Miss, what they like to do with the Maokai putting into the support or the jungle role, that kind of stuff, right? If you have blue side flex picks, you've mastered Fearless in my mind.
Absolutely. And I think there's going to be some really interesting looks here for how these teams utilize their champions and how we might expect to see some of those flex picks. Like, peak performers have got some interesting champion pools in their own right, and they're definitely teams that are willing to flex some of these things around, right? We've seen stuff like the Poppy, which is a classic Alorem pick that he draws bans on all day long, but they flexed that down to Dardoch multiple times throughout this season, have been willing to play it over there. Wouldn't surprise me if Kitsuo was willing to bust it out in the jungle as well. The Maokai been in kind of similar territory. They've taken a page out of Izo's book and even played a little Maokai top lane up there with Alorem, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see how exactly they want to utilize all those picks. So those mages bot lane and that Corki still going to be a flex between mid and bot. Both teams ones that I would expect to take advantage of those opportunities. But a big matchup I want to highlight here, specifically because of the distinction in champion pool, is going to be that top lane where PCL is going to be taking on Alorem. Alorem is the same guy we all know and love if you've watched any of him in tier 3 and tier 2 over the last couple of years. He's a big tank player. He's a big weak side player. Plays the Scion. He's got a real dangerous Tahm Kench in the current meta. He's been playing a lot of Tahm Kench top. He's busted out the Renekton a couple of times, which used to be a bit of a meme associated with him, but outside of that one, it's been all tanks all day long. Meanwhile, PCL, he's really gone in on those aggressive top laners. The Gnar has been a really high play rate for him. He's played a couple of games of Camille, and since the playoffs have started and she's been enabled, he's picked up that Ambessa in both series.
Yeah, and I love how you kind of, brought off to that Mbessa point, because music as well, a mad chemist in the jungle. And I remember talking to this guy, he was talking about Mundo jungle and how good it is. Like, I've seen Mbessa jungle. I wouldn't be surprised if ISU is willing to flex it, but I love how you categorized Alorum, right? You know how he is, you know what he's about. He, when I saw that his Alorum mobile finally broke down, I mean, that's Alorum, right? If it ain't broke, you don't gotta fix it. If he's gonna play tanks, if tanks are viable, that's what he's gonna rock in the top side. As we do get the bans underway, the Aurora being removed, as well as the Mbessa that you talked about, Gordo. I think they've taken to your advice. But yeah, Alorum, I love how you categorize him. There's nothing wrong with the way he plays the game, in my opinion. I think he's very stable, very solid, and just a really good top laner to have if you're somebody like Sage Wabe. If you're an AD carry, Alorum is the kind of top laner you want to have on your team.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing about Alorum is he does also always have these kind of niche pocket picks that only really he brings out. They've been taken away from him as the years have gone on. He's kind of dropped off of the Urgot over the last couple of years. On hit Nico, no longer really a thing. We saw Zabuto try it earlier this season. It's not really a thing anymore, but he does have that Trundle still, and he is willing to bust out that Trundle if the matchup suits it. So keep in mind that he will have a couple of tricks up his sleeve when the situation calls for it. But Corki going to get snapped up first pick here. That's going to be a flex pick between Meslo and Makel for sure.
Yeah, I love that teams have been willing to flex this Corki into the bottom lane, right? I think he's a really good matchup when you pair him up with something like the Leona, like the Rel, that can really just front load a ton of his damage here. Ashe being locked in, really nice lane neutralizer, kind of just doesn't win too hard, doesn't lose too hard, provides you with that pick potential, right? Non-committal engage. Ashe is very, very good. You can stack her with different kinds of comps as well. You can go for a pick comp if you want, or you can go for something more hard, snap engagey, and just be like, I'm going to throw out an Ashe arrow every 60 to 65 seconds, and if it hits, you're dead to rights. If you don't have a cleanse, you're kind of cooked here, and I love the Jarvan layering on top of it for peak performers. Doesn't really give away too much, but that 1-2 punch of Ashe arrow plus flag and drag and Cataclysm, ISU definitely have to be on notice here.
Yeah, and I mean, this is looking really dangerous out of peak performers already. Not to be calling the draft too early, but that Jarvan left up for Kitsuo, that's a champion that he has been very, very adept on, and that he has been drawing a lot of focus towards him on. The other one that's up is that Tahm Kench, which, especially since playoffs have started, basically nobody is willing to hand over to Alorum. So I wouldn't be shocked to see a Tahm Kench snacked out on R3 here. And if the top lane matchup gets so impossible, I bet they're willing to flex it over to Dardoch as well in case things get a little desperate. But there's that Maokai snapped on up, very likely to be for music in the jungle, but could also be at support for Barlow.
Now, I mean, I heard this was an Ole Miss, but ISU may take a page out of their books here. I do like the Ziggs here, kind of that big all-in, not all-in, but more like kind of that lane neutralizer as well, right? Makes it boring. I would like to call him the Malzahar of bot lane because he kind of just shoves, pushes. You can't really do much about him here, as we are going to potentially see the Azir locked in for peak performers. Now, what I'm looking for on peak performer side as they lock this in here, right? I want them to take away a lot of these more support pairings that you'd see with the Ziggs, right? Maybe something like the Leona, like the Rel. Remove that away from ISU and force ISU to play this like really janky poke composition that they are kind of going for here with the Ziggs and the Corki, and then just stack more all in. I think peak performers have a very solid 3 champion combo here with the Ashe, with the Azir, with the Jarvan. I do like this Poppy removal just as a kind of a safeguard against any sort of shenanigans in the support or jungle role. I know Dardoch has played and has a penchant for Poppy support when it's open.
Absolutely agree there. That Poppy getting banned away here, I think, gonna really protect that Jarvan, though, and make sure that it's going to be able to have all the impact that Kitsuo wants it to have. And the Azir in the mid lane for Robbie doesn't surprise me one bit either. He gets to kind of go back and play his sort of scaling mages, and I think especially playoffs Robbie Bob has been a bit of a different beast. He has been very, very dangerous, really solid performances in lane, really low deaths every game, high CS, high damage output, everything you want out of your control mage player. He is one of the most experienced mid laners, and I think by default just going to be one of the top mid laners we have here in the ACL this split, despite not being an NACL player at this very moment himself. He can definitely go toe-to-toe with some of the best mid laners in this league, and it's going to be a big challenge here for Meslo coming in mid lane to face off up against him. Presumably on this Corki, maybe on this Ziggs, but most likely the Corki.
Yeah, and interesting on the Kindred ban here. I think it's, just kind of more of a respect ban. I feel like Azir does decently well into some of these Kindred comps. You kind of scoop him out of that Lamb's Respite, but kind of negates the Jarvan Ashe 1-2 punch that I was talking about here. Do see some support bans coming out from ISU. The Rakan being removed. Could see the Leona or potentially the Rel being removed as well because there's a Poppy ban. Instead, I get it all wrong, Gordo, and it's a Nautilus being taken out here. Pretty common pairing with the Ziggs, right? Ult plus ult combo is really, really good for them, right? As there's that Tom Kench that you talked about. Thomas Kenshin the third. Is he going to be locked in, though? That is the question. It's going to be taken, and I think we all know where that's going.
Yeah, the flex is alive, but it's definitely an Alorum favorite. It's been one that he has received the majority of the looks on over the course of the Peak Performer season. It's his most played, if I'm not mistaken. Tied with the Scion, actually, at 5 games apiece. But still, that's
like
for a full Fearless format where you've only played 10 series. That's a 50% pick rate. You got quite a bit of that there. That's going to be his 6th in 11 series now, so very likely going over to Alorum, and that does keep Dardoch with last pick, and this is a guy with a deep support pool. He will play a little bit of everything. The only champion he's played more than twice all season long has been that Alistar, which is going to be available for him if he does want to take it, but he definitely has the capability of bringing out all sorts of different looks, the enchanters, the engagers, everything in between, and there will definitely be quite an array available to him here. Wukong going to get locked in. That's probably going into the jungle unless it is a flex to top for PCL, but the Jax being available means that is what he is looking for, so it's probably going to be Jax top, Wukong jungle, Maokai support down bot with the Ziggs.
Yeah, Maokai support, really good disengage, right? Just kind of functions as like a, hey, get off of my Ziggs, get off of my Corki. There's nothing you can do about it as you throw that ultimate down. A lot of that follow-up engage, right, is kind of delayed or desynced, which could be causing issues for Peak Performers, as we do see this Thresh potentially being locked into here, although Malphite, I don't know if they're just hovering for the sake of hovering, but that is a Malphite top, so I believe it's going to be Tom Kench Ashe in the bottom lane, Malphite in the top, and I mean, that's a hard engage comp if I've ever seen from Peak Performers.
Yeah, and the flex does come alive. I just called it out earlier. It's something you do have to respect. No matter how many Tom Kench top games Alorum plays, it's still a champion you could put into the bot lane with that Ashe, and they decide, hey, it's Ziggs Maokai. The ability to soak up some of that poke, going to definitely be valuable. You still get the Devour later on, but hey, we're against a large amount of AD here with that Corki no longer being so much of a magic damage threat. And we don't really worry about that Ziggs too much, so we're going to snap up this Malphite, give ourselves even harder dive, even harder engage, and see if that's going to be enough to be able to pilot its way through the early and mid game and get yourself into some of those sweet, sweet team fights. So Peak Performers keeping the flex pick alive on red side. We'll see how well that pays off for them, as they are quite the passive bot lane now.
Yeah, and I really like what Peak Performance have kind of, I wouldn't say adjusted to, but kind of like indexed on here. It really allows for that scoop to kind of get in onto these big carries, right? Because that's what Robbie Bob wants to do. He wants to set up the scoop. He wants to set up the Stream of Shuffle onto Corki, onto Ziggs, pretty much the two primary damage dealers on ISU's side here. And that's going to really, with the Malphite, with the Ashe, it's going to give him even more time to get into position, to sneak in potentially around Fog of War and get that Stream of Shuffle onto the ISU's two carries here. Mezzo and Mikael definitely have a tough task in front of them. When you stare down champions like Jarvan, like Malphite, your life becomes 10x harder to play and navigate in some of these really hectic team fights here. ISU definitely do have the kind of like side lane winning condition in my mind. I feel like it's going to be really tough to handle and match Jax here. I feel like if ISU want to, they can really index onto these early grubs and play the 6 grub kind of win condition, let's call it, and really kind of force Peak Performers to either match PCL on the side lane or look for an engage under tower or in their jungle or something like that, potentially 5v4 here. But I feel like if the game goes late enough, I really don't know who's going to deal with PCL in the side lane, because if you send Robbie Bob, I feel like you lose out on so much of your damage if you're Peak Performers.
Definitely do here. So We'll find out how they're going to be able to navigate those sorts of situations as we are getting ready to load onto the Rift here before too long. Do want to call out predictions are live for a couple more seconds before we do kick off game number one. You could predict who you think is going to take game number one, gamble some of those channel points, and see if you can get some of those stocks a little bit higher for we get deeper and deeper into the playoffs and those pots start to get really, really large.
Yeah, I just dropped a G on ISU right now because the odds look too good. I'm ready to yoink some points. Whether I believe it or true, I think the fact that there's like a 26 to 74% split right now. There's like so many people on peak performers. If ISU just take this game, I'm rich. I'm undoubtedly rich in channel points here for Aegis Sports. But yeah, I think both of these comps really clear identities, really clear win conditions. Now the big thing is, how does peak performers kind of execute on this hard engaged comp, right? When they hit level 6, where can they force? How much vision are they going to be able to deny, whether it's red side or blue side, and kind of force Illinois or ISU to kind of walk into some of this darkness here and figure out like, okay, where if we face check the wrong area, we could see a Malphite flying in at us, an Ash Arrow flying in at us. Kitsuo is going to be coming in here, and there's not a lot they can do here. So ISU, I think blue trinkets are going to be their friends, as well as kind of playing more cautiously when champions like when champions like Malphite or Azir aren't really seen on the map. You don't really know where they are. If they've been gone for too long, kind of suspect that they're setting something up.
Definitely, and the other thing to call out here is what this side lane's going to look like for ISU. The fact that they've got this Jax scaling on up, I don't feel like peak performers have a really good answer to it coming later on, especially given the magic damage that Jax can dish out. It's going to be tough for Malphite to really hang in that one-on-one side lane later on in the game. And the Azir will have the range advantage, but going to definitely be at risk of getting collapsed on by somebody like this Maokai, somebody like this Wukong. So going to be curious to see if they're able to get PCL rolling and what peak performers' answer to him is going to be, because they're really going to have to get on those objectives and force the issue if they don't want to just be dealing with Jax split pushing their brains out the whole game long.
Yeah, I definitely want to see if peak performers are going to be willing to contest. I'm going to say the second grub respawn, not necessarily the first one here, because I don't think they're going to be realistically in a solid position to contest that. I do want to see them kind of just split the difference on the grubs and the dragon here, pick up one apiece, and then swap over, pick up one apiece. That's probably the best case scenario for peak performers here, and then just kind of leverage that hard engaged composition onto Meslo, onto Mikael, and kind of make their lives really miserable. If you don't have flash, you're probably dead here. And I do like that we do have like Robbie Bob in as this Azir. I know it's a little tough picking it into champions like Corki and Ziggs, but I think it's really good late game insurance. I think Robbie Bob's excellent on these mages. I think he's been really good this tournament on some of these kind of more scaling laid back kind of mages, and putting Kitsuo on the Jarvan specifically to kind of really like out tempo and out gank somebody like Music who is on this Wukong. That is a perfect recipe here. I think Kitsuo needs to get active, needs to get things done on this Jarvan before Music hits that level 6, before he can find some of these absolutely wild engages where he goes invisible, flashes, and uses the Cyclone onto Robbie Bob or Sage Wabe. My big thing for peak performers is that you can't have either of those two guys away from the team fight, because you just lose out on so much of your DPS.
Yeah, you definitely do. That's why I'm curious about how these early swaps end up playing out too, because like you bring up, peak performers could try to bring somebody up top to challenge for that second grub spawn, but that's really a risk up against the Ziggs comps, especially when they get left alone with that squishier bot lane turret. The difference in plates falling is very noticeable, and if ISU can just blow their way through one of those early turrets, get themselves some of that early advantage, especially on a Makel, it's really going to help out, especially a composition that has this Malphite that's really kind of indexing into Ziggs is the main source of magic damage. There's a lot of physical damage elsewhere. If Makel's able to get ahead and able to really bring the hurt with just those bombs, that's going to be a big problem for them as well. We are on to the Summoner's Rift for game number 1. Illinois State taking on peak performers. I think we got a little bit of a post-spawn pause here, but should be able to kick things off here before too long.
Yeah, I'm gonna point it out for everybody there. If you look at the logos, if you look at everything, if you look at where those two lines meet on the bottom near the clock, it's off by a pixel for all the kind of OCD people. It's off by a slight pixel above the clock there. So cannot.
Why would you bring that up to people?
Oh yeah, they'll never be able to get out of their heads now. They'll look at it and they'll rage. I know at least some people will. It'll bug some guys. As you said, the post pause coming in. Finally, we're all loaded in here, and I want to see if these guys are just going to end up 5-pointing, or if they're actually going to look to invade here. I feel like if ISU chance an invade, they could be in for some trouble if Peak Performers decide to stack. But I typically noticed that in these kind of series, in these more like kind of lose you go home situations, a lot of these teams will just 5-point and play a lot more stable, a lot more safer.
Yeah, absolutely here. So the spread's going to be pretty basic from both teams. Doesn't look like anybody's going to go for anything too early. Oh no, we got another one. No, Makel was having some connection issues to start things off. Hopefully those aren't making a comeback here, as that would certainly throw a bit of a wrench into the plan for the night for ISU, but hopefully they'll be able to get Makel's situation sorted out here before too long. In theory, everybody should be on campus. Everybody should have that same Illinois internet. You're not too far away from the servers, and looks like we've gotten unpaused just as quickly as we got into it.
I've been to Illinois, man. It can be a bit depressing sometimes.
And I'm in Illinois right now. Let's calm down.
Apologies, Gordo. It can be a bit tough here and there here, but I want to see kind of what ISU do here. I feel like with the champions they picked, they haven't invested too much in terms of like draft capital, let's call it, when we talk about the full Fearless format. I think Corki and Ziggs, you're bound to see them, in this meta right now. So investing in those two champions, you're not losing a ton, right? You're not losing like huge, like, oh my God, if we lose this, like now we can't tie our composition together. You can kind of pick these guys wherever you want in multitude of compositions and not really feel too bad about it. Do you feel like Peak Performers maybe have kind of used a lot of their draft capital here with stuff like the Ashe, like the Tom Kench that we've so famously seen Alorum pick in the top side? Now that gets taken away for the rest of the series. He doesn't have that available to him in the top lane.
Yeah, I think that's a big call out there for sure. He's got other champions that he's defaulted to a lot, stuff like the Scion, stuff like the Ornn, and he's willing to play some of those less popular tanks, which is a trait you definitely need to have if you're going to be playing, pretty much purely tanks. But it definitely is going to hurt their pool. Kitsuo, I would say, is the one with the smallest pool that he's shown so far. A lot of Jarvan, a lot of Lee Sin, some Udyr, some Elise, and that's about it. So we'll be curious to see how he's going to be able to adapt as a series potentially goes long. But luckily, with folks like Dardoch and Robbie Bob on your team, you do tend to absorb a couple of those bans. So he usually doesn't find himself focused too heavily.
Yeah, as lane's going as expected. ISU's bot lane kind of just handling and managing Sage Wabe and Dardoch here, and Meslo on this Corki, just pressing the E button and winning out every single trade, right? That's kind of what this champion just does right now here. And I talked about specifically Kitsuo kind of getting in on the action early, using his advantage of that really early CC unlock on the Jarvan to kind of outpace Music, who's going to be grinding towards that level 6, going to be grinding towards that Sheen kind of one item spike, and then he can kind of really get some ganks in with the Cyclone level 6, stuff like that. I really want to see Kitsuo try and punish some of the ISU laners here, right? Put some pressure on them, burn some flashes, leverage that Jarvan as best as you can. And I think Kitsuo, like you said, with how small of a champion pool he has, he needs to win on this champion. But
Oh, here's an early invade from Music and Meslo, cutting off from both sides, and a quick first blood received by Music. Illinois State, they spot him on the ward from the delayed invade, and they punish.
Yeah, I mean, using that mid lane prio on the Corki to just kind of walk in and say, you know what, if you're on this buff, you are dead to rights here. Kitsuo did hold the flash there. Maybe there was an opportunity for him to get out, but yeah, that's kind of rough. It sucks as a jungler too, because now your whole top side's taken, and now Alorum has to play super safe. He's gonna definitely be on the bot side. Like, ISU with that kill have tracked Kitsuo for the next minute and a half.
That's a flash in from PCL, just getting that early stun onto Alorum, but it looks like Music not quite with enough damage to take him down, so it's an exchange of flashes in the top lane. Alorum likely gonna have to use that TP, and PCL might be able to just walk his way back. He might just TP back as well, though, to keep the fight going.
Crucial Summoner burned from Alorum here specifically, and Kitsuo have a bit of a rough time kind of navigating through these lanes, as we do see Dardoch getting some vision down. Maybe that control ward they've placed deep into Music's jungle will net them a kill. Potentially, Kitsuo and Robbie Bob can do what happened to Kitsuo onto Music here later on, as getting that vision down will be really important so that Music can't really do too much. They got to track where he's going, where he's going to be. He should reset after, I believe, these wolves, but honestly, good early game so far from ISU, punishing out the Jarvan, delaying him, kind of making him a little bit more irrelevant in this early game. And by the time they get to like, what, 14, 15 minutes when laning phase is done, if they can kind of keep this same rhythm, same kind of pace, Mezlo and Mikael should be in very good spots to kind of participate and really do some damage in some of these ensuing skirmishes or team fights.
Definitely. Alorum falling low in this trade is going to become a pattern, you got to feel, in this sort of matchup. Robbie and Mezlo exchanging blows, but Robbie coming out on top the whole time long. He's getting another soldier down on top of him to continue poking away. And Robbie has been such a highlight, especially post-playoffs, for all of the Peak Performers squad. Really able to do very well no matter which opponent he's faced off against, and continuing that form up against Mezlo going to be real important, especially now that we've seen Music is already starting to take over. He's been the highlight player for ISU, and he has been the best jungler in ACL the whole split long, I would go so far as to say. I mean, it's really hard to find somebody who's performed better than him, as he's coming in for another gank and going to be able to take down Alorum. A 2-0 start for ISU.
Yeah, aggressive trading on the side of PCL to just kind of set up Music for success here. 2-0 on that Wukong right now, outpacing Kitsuo on the Jarvan here. And that Wukong's going to be really devastating come level 6. As the first set of grubs have spawned here, and ISU rightfully so stake their claim onto it. And there's not really much Peak Performers can do here. Kitsuo is kind of just stuck in the top side, or the top lane kind of picking up the minions. I don't think we can really contest grubs here, though.
Not looking like it, although Kitsuo is still hovering in the area. There's a recall being channeled by Mezlo, so Robbie maybe thinks that he has a chance to come on up. Kitsuo showing himself, and the fact that Mezlo is recalled without TP, kind of making ISU aware that they could be challenged for this, but they will get all 3 grubs regardless, able to back on off. Music has no trouble securing with the smite, and Kitsuo just kind of plays some spectator League of Legends there, watches the grubs fall, but can't do much of anything about it.
And you see kind of maybe frantic pings coming out onto that dragon here, but I don't actually know if Peak Performers are in a good position to take this. I feel like ISU, after taking those grubs, because that kind of instant trade didn't happen, or Peak Performers couldn't really start it before the grubs went down, I'm sure that Mezlo, Music, and the rest of ISU could contest this dragon if they really want to.
I think that that's definitely the case, especially with Mezlo coming back freshly recalled. Shoves the wave again. Robbie is just getting here now, so he's going to be a little delayed in any move here, although Sayoabe and Dardoch are successfully crashing in the bottom side. TP being channeled by Makel, but Peak Performers are just a little bit slower on this play. Doesn't look like Music is too quick to pull the trigger, though. He's starting with his buffs. He's taking things slow and steady.
Yeah, I think just threatening the fact that Mezlo is already in the river there, even if he is spotted on vision, kind of removes any sort of dragon play or dragon trade that would have happened for those grubs here. And Music has now hit level 6 on the Wukong, and this is where things begin to get a little chaotic on the side of Peak Performers, because now, on top of just bringing a front load of damage, Music can now bring some CC, he can skirmish, like, you know, it's tough now for Peak Performers, even if they do hit that level 6 spike that we talked about what their team likes to do. You've got a really, really strong Wukong at the 8-minute mark who can kind of shred through most of your carries.
Yeah, and steadily, you can see on the gold here, about a 500 to 600 gold lead developing for PCL individually here, despite having not picked up the kills earlier on. He's got himself about a 20 CS lead now. It's going to grow right back up to 20. It's at 10 now, but he's going to pick up this wave. Alorum really getting set behind in this matchup. I mean, he's just going to be an unstoppable force button later in the game, so he's not too concerned about that, but PCL is getting rich, and he will be a point of power, as you brought up earlier, on this second grub spawn, if ISU really do want to fully index for it, as Kitsuo spots Music working on his red buff. going to be starting off the combat, but he's down a level. Alorum's coming on over. Music still looking for the fight. Unstoppable Force in, locking down the Wukong. Comes in with the double knockup. Cataclysm going to lock him in place, and Alorum will be able to hold him long enough for Robbie to pick up the shutdown. Nice. Shuffling back away PCL to avoid the stun. Meslo looking to clean up. Will trade his life for Robbie Bobs. It's a 2-for-1 to the Peak Performers.
Too much damage goes on to Music there, so we can't really get that fantasy of that double Cyclone skirmish. Really, really well played from Kitsuo and Alorum, as well as Robbie Bob getting that shove back onto PCL, so he cannot get that stun. Yes, Meslo picks up a kill, but an overall net benefit play for Peak Performers off of a bit of an aggressive invade from Music on that Wukong. I like that. Help your jungler out as we do get that replay coming in, Gordo. I mean, just look at what happens to Music, right? He's already 3/4 of the way dead here, and by the time the rest of his team gets here, PCL and Meslo just try to make something out of nothing here as Meslo flashes forward, gets something in return, but PCL all out of juice, all out of cooldowns. Can't really do too much.
And easy to miss in the initial brawl, but Sagewabe lands a sick Ash arrow across map there on a Meslo as well. And that buys Robbie Bob the time to get involved. He gets to just walk right past his lane opponent to be able to pick up that shutdown. Definitely a big difference maker that allows Robbie to participate. But speaking of participating, Alorum not going to get to do much of that here. He's caught off on the wrong side. Very likely to fall on down here. Does go for the flash, but here's the ultimate. I mean, Makel going to cut him down easy peasy.
Yeah, and I love this, right? You've already seen this bot lane start swapping over for that second grub spawn here. Makel and Barlow are here. Let's see if Peak Performers can do something about it. Music has started it, but he does need his team here, as PCL is on the bottom side. At best, a 4v4, but if PCL decides, he can just channel the TP and make it a really bad numbers disadvantage. Music getting a little aggressive.
Arrow coming on out. Meslo going to be caught on out here. Dardoch may have gone too far, though. Gonna have to pop the gray health, but he will fall sooner or later. Meslo gonna be the one to clean up that kill. And the Peak Performers down a support will be forced off these grubs. Kitsuo still wants to see if he can snag one to deny the full 6, but it's gonna be so impossible. I think ISU are walking away with 6 grubs in this game number 1.
And now it becomes really scary. Unless Sagewabe hits an errant Ash W. Now it's going to be tough because PCL now on this side lane can absolutely murder your turrets, right? And Alorum on this Malphite, he wants to group. He wants to leave lane, help his team out, start these engages, maybe TP in here. Now if you do that, if you leave PCL on the side lane, goodbye tier 1, goodbye tier 2, as well as Barlow potentially getting chased down, double flash.
Oh, going forward, Barlow is the one who is stuck, and Sagewabe going to be able to clean him up, no problem. PCL, though, really starting to flex those muscles, getting up to nearly a 30 CS lead, and does have the level advantage as well. Alorum starting to feel real uncomfortable sitting alone in lane with PCL. Might have to use that ulti defensively soon.
Oh, dive.
Oh, going on in and looking like they are going to be able to finish off Makel, no problem. Dardoch's going to be the trade kill. They are able to escape, but Alorum finding himself face-to-face with PCL yet again. PCL going for the proxy right now, but don't think he's going to want to stay there too long. He's lost a fair bit of health to those shots.
I do like Peak Performers, right? Getting that kill onto Barlow and then using that man advantage to then get onto Makel there, right? Get some gold back into their pockets. Oh, Robbie Bob!
Shuffle back. Barlow stuck underneath the tower, and the heal going to be able to keep him up and standing. I think he might have survived with a sliver either way, but going to make sure that he does not drop. Very close to another kill to Robbie Bob.
Yeah, Barlow almost went for a ride. STP getting channeled in. Kitsuo and Dardoch are here.
It's never stopping. Another Cataclysm in. Meslo going to be the focus, and Robbie Bob is able to clean him up. 2-1-1 start for the Peak Performers mid laner, continuing to funnel him. 1 item done now, looking for plenty more.
ISU just haven't had a chance to breathe these past couple of minutes, right? Peak Performers, play after play after play, right? Kill onto Barlow, follow that up with a dive onto Makel, use those numbers advantages, get onto
whoa, Robbie.
Well. Robbie?
Music just looking for the one-on-one, and he very well might find it. He's so quick. One more Nimbus strike, and Music coming up with the solo bolo against Robbie Bob. 4-1 on the monkey.
Yeah, that's a very strong Wukong here. Robbie Bob not really respecting music or respecting the potential 1v1 from a jungler. Finally, they're getting some tempo back. Is another fight.
Dardoch is the target again, has the great health to stay alive for a little while. Sagewabe just free firing on the side though. Takes a couple of shots into the music clone who gets knocked up on the other side. This is going to be a fat shutdown. Whoever can claim it, but watch out for the Ziggs bombs. Sagewabe going to be traded back. Makel walking away with a double kill, trying to get away from Alorum, and Meslo going to be able to guarantee him a route out. 3 members fall for Peak Performers, 2 for ISU.
Yeah, and all the meanwhile, PCL pushing that side lane, pushing that top side with the 6 grubs. First turret goes down. Somebody's got to answer him here, but a good look from ISU, right? They turn that mid lane kill into another skirmish in that bottom side. Makel kind of saves it here as this fight kind of starts out a little janky, right? We see Kitsuo kind of dive on in, but Sagewabe, we thought he'd be able to free fire. We thought that he'd be able to just kind of run through the rest of ISU, but Makel picks up that kill. Music on this Wukong, tankier than what would most suspect because of that passive. And unfortunately, Alorum just does not have the juice here, and Makel gets out alive. Good look from ISU to keep that fight going and really understanding how much damage they have.
Yeah, and music is just a problem now. He's participated in so many kills. He's ahead in farm. He's got 1.5 items completed, and he's just an absolute menace in these fights with that stone skin passive. Like you were saying, it takes too long for Sagewabe to be able to work through his health bar on just the static shiv, as they're looking to keep that tower pressure up by getting themselves this Rift Herald, and doesn't look like Peak Performers can manifest a response. That's kind of 3 topside objectives in a row where Peak Performers have 1 or more members roll up as though they're going to contest, and then they find out too late that they can't do it.
Yeah, super unfortunate here. They're going to go for that dragon trade or dragon snack here for Peak Performers. It's Infernal, so we could potentially see something like an Ocean Drake or even something like a Mountain Soul here for Alorum and the rest of Peak Performers, which would be really, really good. But we see tier 2 turret going down. It's a big chunk of change going to go into the pockets of both Meslo and Music. Ooh, it'll be tough.
All right, Makel's caught. I don't know how Dardoch got the full stacks for the Devour there, but he did. And that is going to be an easy kill, hand delivered to Sagewabe. Kitsuo getting caught in rotation, though, going to have to back on away. Music and Barlow not with quite enough damage to burst down the Jarvan quickly. And some alone time in mid lane for Sagewabe should be able to get some work done on this tower. Meslo forced to TP.
He's going to look to save that tier 1 here, but you look, ISU just got a fat chunk of change into their pockets here. The gold lead just about 4,000 or 3,500 as we're going to see it even up here. But I think ISU have had a pretty solid grip on this game, right? Peak Performers have been able to kind of find their moments, kind of keep some momentum going, right? With that dive in the top side, then turning that kill into Robbie Bob. But it just feels like ISU is able to hit back a little harder on some of these skirmishes. And the fact that they've had complete control, like you said, of those top side objectives, 6 grubs plus the Herald, converting that into a tier 2 in the top side. I mean, they are just hoarding and gathering gold, which is the name of the game for ISU. As long as they can keep that gold, as long as they can keep that stat differential from Peak Performers, it doesn't matter how good of a hard engaged composition Peak Performers have. ISU can just kind of slap them with the wallet and be completely fine with it.
Yeah, they really just need to take some time now on the Peak Performers side and get some extra items into Robbie Bob. 2 items in Sagewabe is a good start, but he's going to need to be their big DPS threat. He's going to need to be using these soldiers to hit multiple members, and that's going to be their best shot here with the extra defensive capabilities that Dardoch is affording them on the Tahm Kench. But will they get the time to do that? I still think this side lane threat is a huge problem. We can see every time we check up on PCL, he's just picking on old Alorum here. Although the completion of that first item is helping him out a little bit here, and Kitsuo coming to give him a little bit of further backup. Great dodge from PCL, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to save him. He's thrown down the Grandmaster's Might, goes for another ward hop underneath the turret. Alorum will tank that all day long. Meanwhile, ISU is taking themselves another tower. Are they going to be able to finally get PCL? They do. It's one more seismic shard that does it, but at what cost, Chibi?
I mean, they lose so much on that bottom side. They've over-invested onto PCL here, and Oh, he does get scooped up.
Ooh, nice shuffle back from Robbie Bob, but Dardoch has fallen so quickly, and I don't know if they got the firepower to keep this fight going. He's diving in for Meslo, forced to flash away, taken down. Sage Wabe arrives to the scene, but it might be a little bit too late. Kitsuo coming in on the side as well, doesn't have the Cataclysm. But look at Alorum, he's TP'd in deep behind enemy lines, and now it is an easy cleanup for the Peak Performers. He's not going to let Barlow go. He's trying to hunt him all the way down. Kitsuo doing the same for Music on the opposite side. But I don't think anybody else is falling, actually. They got the mobility. Kitsuo still on the chase, but without any tools to close the gap, he's getting out.
Let him out. Stop bullying him. Alorum TP'd in with no ultimate on the Malphite. So he's just like he's a seismic shard machine, right? That's all he is, really. As PCL understands, like, hey, I got to make sure my team can get out of here alive. But that TP only nets them 1 kill. As we do get a replay onto Makel.
Oh, Makel, no.
He's just dead. He just gets ashed. Like, that's what happens, unfortunately. You just got ash arrowed as that kill's going to come in.
Gotta have your patience. Gotta give the minions their turn. Steps into the turret shot just a little too early. And a good punish from Sage Wabe. So now we got a little bit of peace for the first time in a while. Baron has just spawned. Could be something that ISU looks to threaten sooner or later, as they do have themselves a nice little 4K gold lead, but you do have to watch out for the big engage combos that Kitsuo, Robbie Bob, and Alorum can bring to the table.
Yeah, I think once Robbie Bob takes over to that second item, it could mean a little bit of trouble for ISU, who haven't really kitted out too much magic resist other than the Merc Treads on the side of 3 members here. Like, you know, Robbie Bob could start just shredding through your team if given enough time, if enough Sand Soldiers are on that skirmish here. And the Alorum Kitsuo combo with the ultimate, the double ultimate, could just put ISU in a blender here. Yeah, it's a 4,000 gold lead, but like we mentioned, Peak Performers, they do have that hard engage comp, and if they can get the right conditions, the right ultimates, the right item spikes in, Peak Performers could easily swing this gold lead to even or potentially in their favor off of one really good fight here. I just feel like we haven't seen a true Peak Performers like composition win condition, right? We haven't really seen them get that dream scenario fight that we've been hoping for with this Jarvan and Malphite.
But I do think that's really, you know, where ISU have buttered their bread this season. They are really good at playing these kind of standard fights. Although, as I say that, Barlow gonna get snagged by the Enchanted Crystalero, able to take Kitsuo's round out. Big engage from Alorum over the wall, lands the double knockup, but the DPS is not quite there. He's gonna get melted down by the carries. Sage Wabe has to flash away from the damage of the Wukong, but Robbie Bob is untouched and keeps everybody low. Multiple shots from the soldiers to get those health bars blinking, and Dardoch might keep this one going. He's waiting for a jump over the wall, gonna interrupt these recalls. He dives in blind and finds 3, maybe more than he could bargain for, but here comes Robbie Bob trying to turn it back around, gets the first kill, but drops immediately after. Peak Performers, they get their Soul Drake, but they lose 4 members in the process.
They bite off just a little bit more than they can chew. There is Sage Wabe gonna get this before the TP channels? Whoa. He does! Oh, that's like a half a second? That's 0.5 seconds until that TP gets absolutely completed there. Sage Wabe gets a turret, gets a TP there, but look at this fight. Look how it starts off, right? Ash Arrow into Barlow, but just look what Alorum and Kitsuo do. They trap both the carries into the Cataclysm, and when you're in the baby cage, when you're in the crib, Robbie Bob is allowed to cook as he rips through the rest of ISU there. Gets the dragon, but they unfortunately get a little too frisky after that and unfortunately lose too many members. But we just talked about that scenario of Kitsuo and Alorum doubling up, Cataclysm plus Malphite ultimate. You have to believe if Robbie Bob is in position, he can get that big scoop, and there's a ton of damage going down onto those carries, but that's just enough. He hits that 2-item power spike with the Void plus Nashers.
Ooh, Kitsuo diving forward, finds 2, devoured out by Dardoch. TP, that's Alorum getting involved onto the flag, hits the knockup, locks down Music, and it's an early kill with a shuffle back from Robbie Bob. Meslo's still stuck in here. Peak Performers force the issue and dominate the fight. A failed flash from PCL to cap it all off. 4 kills for just Robbie Bob.
Peak Performers, they get the double dream fight scenario here. 2 fights in a row. They get a massive Malphite ultimate into a massive scoop from the Azir. Robbie Bob and the rest of the gang do pick up 4 kills, but can Maykel do something about this Baron? He's poking and prodding.
Oh, Maykel, you've had a couple of silly blunders in a row, but can you turn this one around? Finds Dardoch, but the Baron has fallen in the meantime, and the remaining Peak Performers members will be able to retreat. They get back into base, they get to spend their hard-earned cash, and they've got, I think, 4 Baron buffs. I think Robbie Bob got that in time.
Yeah, I believe so, and honestly, Dardoch going down, sacrificing himself for that Baron is a welcome sacrifices. Peak Performers have just, trimmed up that gold lead. It was 4,000 in the favor of ISU. It still is about 1.5 in their favor, but it's tough because Peak Performers have just been able to find those dream team fight scenarios, and it really doesn't have a ton of counterplay. Like Meslo and Maykel are kind of just stuck in this CC gauntlet, and by the time they're allowed to leave, Robbie Bob is on the chase. He's got the Sand Soldiers. He scoops them up. There's just too much front-loaded damage on the side of Peak Performers. Meslo and Maykel just cannot get all the damage they need down.
Definitely not, and it's starting to become a problem for them as multiple fights now swinging back to Peak Performers, gets the gold basically even, and it's a flash engage from Alorum. He just wants Meslo. Doesn't look like Sagewabe is going to be able to be into a position to start firing back away though, so these frontliners going to have to retreat. They get good damage on Barlow, but now the turret is in the way. The Baron buff is keeping the siege minion at bay, and they're going to be able to hold him in place for a while longer. Alorum going to get left out to dry. He will drop. Kitsuo devoured out of there by Dardoch as Dardoch re-engages in the middle of 4, looking to clean up Barlow. Will be able to do it, but it's a trade for himself, and now Kitsuo's the next target. Sagewabe has a fat shutdown on him that he doesn't want to give away. Robbie Bob isolates PCL in the top side. Counter-Strike will keep him alive for a short while, but he will drop on the other side as Kitsuo getting chased down by Music and will end up falling. Now it's Sagewabe in a 1 versus 3 behind enemy lines. Can he save himself? I think this might be a delay of the inevitable, Shibby.
He's not going to get out for sure, but he's going to waste some time here. Kind of a bit of a disastrous use of that Baron. It only nets them that tier 2 in the bottom side, and then pretty much gets them wiped. Robbie Bob still does have Baron in his pocket, but I feel like that Baron, just as quickly as they got it, it gets removed, and ISU find themselves a scrappy team fight win off of a, I would say, over-aggressive dive from Peak Performers, right? You saw both Alorum and Kitsuo stuck behind that turret because of the Baron-empowered cannon minion that you pointed out here, but we're not going to have too much time to think about that as we have 5 seconds until this dragon, this mountain soul for Peak Performers, is up on the board. But with Sagewabe still having a 10-second death timer, surely ISU picked this up.
And here comes Alorum on the TP. They want to try to challenge for this, but they're a little too late on the play. They're going to have to back away, and this has been a trap that PP keep falling into, and this time the trap's got some extra teeth to it. A double kill coming over to Maykel as PCL going to advance forward, looking for Alorum, who has to unstoppable force over the wall to stay alive. ISU clean up 2, deny the soul, and they're in control of the map.
Yeah, really good bounce back from ISU, leveraging that delayed respawn from Sagewabe to get the dragon and then win that ensuing team fight, understanding that they have the numbers advantage. That decisiveness from ISU is what's going to keep them steady in this game, keep them ahead in gold here. And now because Kitsuo and Dardoch are on respawn, they can begin to siege this mid lane tier 2. And we've got Corki and you've got Ziggs. It's easy work. That turret is mincemeat.
Another inner falls. PCL going to try to go to work on this other one, but I'm going to be honest here, Shivy. Ever since that Hollow Radiance got completed, Alorum's got some hands when he starts trading with PCL here, and PCL going to have to show him some respect. Robbie Bob going for the TP flank, trying to cut off PCL, and it looks like he's going to find him. I mean, where does PCL have to go? He's out of spaces. It's going to get shuffled away here to deny the counter-strike and an easy kill for Peak Performers.
Yeah, it gets shuffled into the graveyard, just like one of Yugi's cards from the grave here. Is unfortunately PCL, yeah, I mean, just an overextension, right? Took too many fights, too many trades onto Alorum, and I love that Robbie Bob is just willing to let that TP rip right? It's like, you know what? We find a play here. We can get some vision down for that kill onto PCL. They should be able to walk into this Baron side coming up in about a minute and 15 seconds and lay down some very crucial control wars. ISU don't want to be the team face checking, right? They don't want to face check into Malphite, into Jarvan. They want to be there first. They want to get their setup and really start poking and prodding some of these more, you know, kind of smaller choke points that peak performers have to walk through, whether it's top try, bottom side on that river area, right? It's tough for ISU to walk into peak performers.
Absolutely here. Peak performers looking to keep some control up on this top river. Baron buff going to be spawning in about 40 seconds here. And they definitely want to be able to secure that one, to be able to give themselves some space to break up the base and even give themselves a crack at this next dragon. That Mountain Soul, still something that they really need to secure for themselves to feel more comfortable in these team fights later on. ISU, though, making a beeline over, and the pattern over and over again all game long. ISU are set up for the play first. Peak performers are a little bit behind.
Yeah, and like clockwork, PCL and Alorum trading, and like you mentioned, Alorum does have some hands. He's absolutely smacking PCL up here. Malphite is actually beating Jax in the side lane. I don't know if it's an itemization issue from PCL or if Alorum is just better.
I don't know, man, but something. I mean, Alarm does have 3 items to PCL's 2. I'm sure that's helping. The PP getting forced back here. Nature's Grasp going to find Kitsuo. He tries to flag and drag away. Shuffle back from the side of Robbie Bob as he gets devoured up. PCL at risk of being solo killed. We got the double view coming through here as Alorum finds himself a solo kill. This man may be, what, 31 now, but he's still got the hands. Yeah, old man Jenkins can still throw down here as PCL is going to be hit on that respawn. TP is up, so peak performers, if they want to hit this Baron, if they want to do it, they've got to do it quick here while they still have that man advantage, and it looks like it. But Mako and Maslow are alive here, and they can definitely do some damage. Fish in a barrel situation. Can we stop watching Ziggs? I don't know what's going on. I think Caddy might have crashed here, as here comes that Baron. It's fallen lower and lower, down below 2.5k. Flash in from Music, knocked up by Alorum, looking to steal the Baron. Music gets it as he drops. Sage Wabe going to put him in the dirt, but loses the Baron in the process. Peak performers seeing what they can do to get some revenge, but the remaining ISU Redbirds are able to fall back in time. They will be able to buy themselves time through this death timer thanks to that steal.
Apes together strong as Music flings his body to the Baron. Sage Wabe, oh, he's just barely out of reach.
Ooh, arrow nearly connects, but Sage Wabe won't be able to get it. Barlow able to stay standing, and ISU still very close to full strength. Down a jungler, though. 16 seconds on the Dragon, 15 seconds on Music. He's their smite. Peak performers with a shot at the soul.
No GP from Alarm. He's going to have to take the long walk of shame here. 4v4 as of right now, but peak performers are going to muscle their way in. Look at Jax. Look at Jax.
Yeah, PCL wants this, and he's going to need it. They're in a 4 versus 5 situation. Diving in. Big Mega Inferno Bomb from Makel will get the first kill out of Dardock, but now Kitsuo's falling back to be able to get on top of PCL and keep Robbie Bob safe. Robbie Bob still finding chances to fire away with the soldiers. PCL into the back line. Music has arrived. PCL is forced out, but he's keeping himself alive for as long as he needs to. Robbie's down. Sage Wabe's down. Dardock's down. And Alorum is at a sliver of HP deep into the enemy base. ISU, by the time, get their jungler back, and they're still hanging on.
Itsuo trying to do something, buying as much time as possible. Cataclysm onto Mako, but it's not enough. And a full ace for ISU here, and that's going to net them the Dragon as well. Like you said, Gordo, they bought enough time. The bat signal was shown, and Music swooping in like a superhero saves the Dragon Soul for ISU, and peak performers will have another shot at this soul in about 5 minutes.
This is a best of 3, Shibby. This is still only game number 1, and they are going blow for blow. 35 minutes in, no Dragon Soul will be secured here. What an engage from Barlow and PCL. What a fight from PCL in general. This guy was 0-5 coming into this one, and he just plays it perfectly. Gets the flank off, buys the time, kills Robbie Bob, and saves the entire game, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, just being able to get onto both carries there, taking both Sagewabe and Robbie Bob down. Once those guys are done, Peak Performers don't have much gas left in the tank, as you saw kind of hilariously, Kitsu and Alorum just kind of getting walked down by Meslo, by Mikael, by Music there. And I don't know if Peak Performers allows that to happen again. That's kind of those one-time flanks. Now they're going to be like permanently on the lookout for PCL, trying to mark him as much as possible. I feel like Peak Performers just played that a little too fast, right? They didn't respect the 4v4 power, because Alorum, by the time he got there, both his carries were pretty much dead.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact that they were able to work that out means that this game is still incredibly close. It's a lead to ISU in the gold. The threat of that Dragon Soul, though, continues to be a massive problem, and the fact that Robbie Bob is 4 items deep into this Azir build means that the threat is always there, that he can stay safe in a fight and carry it through. He's done it multiple times this game. If they find their engages, if they get their shuffles, if they create the space, they can win in straight up 5-on-5 situations. But we got a 2-on-2 situation here about to be made unfair by the arrival of Robbie Bob himself. Over the wall comes Music. Dardoch is looking to disrupt him. Meslo's the one left alone. He goes into the zone. He is to be able to stay alive for a little bit longer, but PCL is coming in on the flank. They get the first kill, but Robbie Bob, his back's up against the wall, trying to fight his way out, but knocked back up by Music, fighting forward, devoured up by Dardoch, and carried to safety. Robbie Bob is untouched. He finds his way into the ISU backline. Kitsuo dives forward onto Mako. It's a triple kill to Sagewabe. A 5-for-1 ace to the Peak Performers, and that might just be game number 1.
Robbie Bob TPing in, getting a ton of damage here. Very good look from Peak Performers to get the game 1 victory. And all it takes is 1 or 2 ultimates, either the Cataclysm or the Unstoppable Force, to land onto the ISU carries. Peak Performers in an absolute slobber knocker of a game 1, Gordo. 35 minutes in.
Look at this fight.
They take the game. I mean, just look at this. How disgusting is this? Meslo burns the Flash, burns the Valkyrie, and it's like, wait, there's an Azir and a Jarvan on my tail here. And by the time he goes down, the fight is done. Good look from Robbie Bob as well, being absolutely automatic on that Shurima shuffle to make sure PCL doesn't get into the backline. And a nice eat from Dardoch to keep Roberto Baberto alive. And that's the game, right? That's the game right there.
That is my man, Robbie Bob, keeping himself alive. Sagewabe does his job as well. I really feel like we did not get to highlight that man enough. He got himself, gotta be 11-ish kills by the end of that one. We'll see when we get the post-match stats up. Actually, we only have damage numbers, and in that department, Robbie Bob is in the lead with Alorum hot on his tail. Look at all the damage this Malphite was able to do over the course of the game. That Hollow Radiance really paying off big time. Is that real? A very close fight between these two squads, and to the bitter end, ISU have a gold lead. They lose the game with a 2K gold lead.
Yeah, you got to see that sea of blue right there, and just like, how did we lose this game? And that's crazy to me as well, as we see like 15.5k damage from PCL. It's insane to me because he definitely traded a ton with Alorum here, but I guess he just was not really available in a lot of those team fights. And no, Malphite damage, which does stack up here, is we kind of saw both teams really execute on their win conditions pretty well, right? The Corki and the Ziggs topping out the damage charts for ISU. The comp was centered around them, really set up those fights with the Wukong Cyclone. So I think Music was doing a really good job. But the fact that, you know, Peak Performers just had this snap engage, the fact that Robbie Bob was allowed to scale into 3-4 item territory on this Azir, there is just too much CC, too much setup. The fact that both of your carriers are getting locked up by either Cataclysm or Unstoppable Force, the whole time getting picked apart by Azir Sand Soldiers, yeah, I mean, you're just gonna have a rough time here. And really well played from Peak Performers. Even though they were kind of perpetually down in gold, their composition kind of just carried them through that 4,000 gold deficit that they were kind of perpetually in.
Absolutely here. And with that said, that's only game number 1. Peak Performers get themselves a lead. The lower bracket buff for Lorem, Dardoch, and Robbie Bob is real. These guys have made multiple deep runs through ACL lower brackets in the past, and they're looking to do it again. Made it all the way to top 4 last fall with Mirage Alliance, while they were very much not expected to be able to make that deep of a run. Now, odds still stacked against them, up against the 8-0 regular season Illinois State. We'll see if they are going to be able to close it out, or if ISU can bring it back, sub a bot laner or not. After this break, we're going to send it to a quick word from Pro Comps, and we will see you guys on the other side.
Quick shout out to Pro Comps, our sponsor and a game changer app for the league community. This isn't just like the other tools. It's your personal draft coach, perfect for both teams and solo players. In fact, you can pair it with any other app you use. ProComp stands out with features like custom champion pools, personalized tier lists, and live draft advice. Think of it as having a virtual coach and a strategy toolkit all in one. They offer real-time champion ban recommendations. They already have over 200,000 downloads and thousands of daily users just like you. ProComps is user-friendly and totally free. It is a no-brainer to at least give it a go. Download ProComps now, and you'll experience a whole new level of drafting power in your league games. Go to procomps.gg, download it from Overwolf, or click the panel below on our stream.
Welcome back, everybody, to tonight's broadcast of the Aegis Champions League, where the lower bracket matchup between ISU and Peak Performers heading into game number 2, and Peak Performers fight their way back and take game number 1, even from a gold deficit, Shibby.
I mean, you talked about it a little bit, right? PP magic. That's literally what it is.
I don't know if I called it that, but you can call it whatever you want, dude. These guys have really been able to show off and have a huge run so far, from being very nearly locked out of playoffs, right? I mean, Next Level Esports or Chaotic Solar win an extra game somewhere, and these guys might not even get a postseason. But from going 4th seed Demacia to now being up against the 1st seed from Demacia, I mean, it's been a huge turnaround for these guys. They've really turned it on in playoffs.
Yeah, and I don't think it can be stated enough how much of an upset this would be, right, from the side of Peak Performers if they're able to take out ISU, a team that, you know, throughout ACL looked like a top 4 team. For them to not even crack top 8 would be a massive statement coming out from Peak Performers there. And I think it's tough. ISU are down, like you said, down in the hole 0-1. They've got to string together 2 games in a row in a full Fearless format. We talked about how some of the draft capital that they ended up using might have not been super, you know, like costly, but the fact that like Corky and Ziggs are gone, you don't have those really OP champions to fall back to. I doubt Skarner is going to be opened up in any of these matches to either junglers, right? So like now ISU have to come in with 10 champions that have a surefire way of victory that can kind of get them into this position, into this top 8. And the fact that, you know, like you said, they dropped to Guangdong Flying Tigers. They might be on a little bit of a downswing. Makel is playing as a sub player. Makel, fantastic player in his own right, but isn't Fatican, right? It isn't their bot laner that they've been playing with for the majority of the season. It all kind of cobbles together, right? Like a witch's cauldron, all these different ingredients for a huge disaster on the side of ISU. All the right things are happening.
Yeah, definitely. And it's looking like they've been struggling a little bit. You can't put it all on Makel. Definitely didn't play a flawless game, but yeah, had a couple of blunders here and there, but overall performed quite well on the Ziggs, was a big part of some of those more successful team fights. I just think, you know, just the perfectly wrong things went bad at just the right time. I think a big difference there was the fact that they were able to collapse on Meslo so effectively. You know, this Kitsuo and Alorum are just nut jobs when they're on these engaged champions. They will force the issue again and again until they come out on top. Now we're swapping sides for game number 2. Let's see what ISU can bring out to adapt now that Command Attack gets his red side.
Yeah, blue side for Peak Performers here, and they've got to be able to flex some of these picks that we talked about, right? Blue side flex picks have been the name of the game for Fearless in my mind. And I want to see if Peak Performers can either clean this out 2-0 or at least give us a good game 2, right? If they can make it really competitive with some of the picks that they bust out, it could be setting us up for an explosive game 3. But we've got to get there as ISU, like you said, on this red side, counter pick available. Malphite, unfortunately, not available here.
No, not anymore.
For either team. A good takeaway. I will say it's a solid takeaway from Peak Performers as well.
True.
As subtle as it is.
Well, look, if we're going to make Command Attack memes, then the other one to be on the lookout for is going to be that Mordekaiser, right? I mean,
yeah, hey, you can't QSS the ultimate. I think some people still don't understand that. So could be an opening here. But yeah, I think ISU on red side could be very devastating. As we talked about, music, one of those mad scientists, mad chemists in the jungle is willing to bust out some unique picks here. And I think in these kind of do or die situations, win or go home, I need ISU to show me something different, show me something spicy. Whatever you've been saving for top 8, for top 4, I'm sorry, Command Attack, go through plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, get to X, Y, and Z and pull it out right now. That's what I need from you.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see a team try to focus towards Kitsuo a little bit more, right? Yeah. I called this out in game number 1. He's shown a little bit more limited of a champion pool so far. He's lost his Jarvan now. The Lisa and the Udyr have been like the big fallbacks for him, and past that, he hasn't gotten to show us a whole lot of different picks. So if we just get to see him go Lisa and Udyr in games 2 and potentially 3, I think that's going to be a big missed opportunity for ISU to potentially be able to pinch that pool, especially where it's most limited, as everybody else on Peak Performers are pretty deep in what they can bust out. These guys have been around the block many a time, and the same is true for ISU, right? They have deep rosters across the board. Music in particular, a guy who's really willing to bring out quite the large assortment of champions, and that's all the more reason to potentially focus Kitsuo, right? He can take away stuff like that Lee Sin and still be comfortable on it. He's played it a couple times this season already, and you know that he's got the skills to be able to perform on it. So an option that they have if they want to go for it and potentially limit the pool even further into game 3, because if you're ISU, you are hoping for a game 3 at this point. Otherwise, it means you're going home early.
Yeah, and it's, you know, for people tuning in that maybe just looking at the box score, ISU played a very good game 1, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like they
especially
were
early.
In a perpetual lead, right? Getting Kitsuo set back a little bit with that early jungle invade and then kind of following that up, acquiring the 6 grubs plus Herald, right? Using that Herald, leveraging it into that tier 2 turret, putting gold both onto Meslo on the Corki and obviously, Music on the Wukong. Like they allocated their gold correctly and they put it onto the right people. It's just Peak Performers kind of broke the system a little bit by constantly going on these really crazy chases with Robbie Bob investing TPs for like a singular kill, right? And then going, all right, well, we have a Lorem and Kitsuo. Let's just send everything in the kitchen sink at Meslo, and if it works, it works, and we can leverage that into a game win. Like Peak Performers, they refuse to kind of play like the back and forth of League of Legends, and they're just like, I'm gonna keep moving my queen like 3 pieces 3-4 times in a row, and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, definitely. And, this is where you got to start to look at a new ISU roster and wonder how well they've been able to adjust following some of their first real losses. This is now 3 games lost in a row for them, and that's as many as they lost in the entire regular season. And that's individual games, right? They never lost a series until losing that Guangdong Flying Tigers series in the upper bracket last week. Now they find themselves facing off in a potential elimination match. I mean, your fate can turn around real fast here in the Aegis Champion League playoffs, and they got knocked here without even seeing a best of 5. I think that would be pretty tragic for them. So they definitely at least want to move on to top 8 here. Preferably, they probably want top 6 and get some of those fearless best of 5s that everybody is talking about. But one step at a time, and those steps are going to have to start with breaking that loss streak and winning some games right here, right now. Yeah, and as exciting as it would be to see ISU kind of in that top 6, like you mentioned, best of 5, full fearless. I think, Robbie Bob, Alorum, right, Dardoch, these kind of players, they just kind of, entice some excitement when they get into these later stages, right? As they kind of have powered up through the playoffs here and are trying to go on an absolutely demonic lower bracket run here, as we do get champion bands coming in. Aurora going to be taken away, Bessa as well, and the Smolder being removed by ISU. So I don't think Peak Performers really have to change too much of their draft strategy, like you mentioned. I think they can kind of keep the same bands going through, take those champions away, and then just start kind of, picking up some of these more hard engaged composition. If it works, it works. I don't know if ISU actually have a solid answer if the Poppy gets removed. Yeah, ISU on the same bands so far. Peak Performers taking away the Skarner ban, subbing it out for a Lilia ban so that they can threaten the Skarner first pick themselves. Let's see if ISU leaves the Varus up to take that Skarner ban. I think that would be the expected maneuver here. Reminder to everybody who maybe doesn't watch ACL every week, we are full fearless, so all of the champions from game number 1 down below going to be disabled for the rest of the series for both teams. And there's that Skarner. He gets snatched on up, so Peak Performers, they get the top tier jungler, they get the Scorpion to start things off, and ISU, they're going to have to win up against one of the most prized champions in League of Legends if they want to keep this series alive. Yeah, it's really interesting. I said, I don't think Skarner will be opened up in either of these games. But you know what? Game 2, why not? If you're on blue side, force red side to ban some of these OPs or give them over. Now, ISU have to come in with a mighty 1-2 R1 R2 here, because giving Skarner away, I feel like that champion is, even with some of the minor nerfs that have come in, this champion is just like a Z tier jungler. He's so good in any situation, can slot into a multitude of different compositions, and we do get a Varus Viego, which is a pseudo reset composition. Varus does reset off of takedowns. The attack speed, if you go attack speed Varus, it could be lethal here. Now, do they index? Do they double down and they say, you know what? We've got Varus Viego. Let's throw an Ari on top. Let's throw an Aatrox potentially in the top side. Maybe ISU can go for this full boom reset composition. Yeah, perhaps here. I mean, the Viego definitely something that's highly prized for Music, and I guess this is his answer to the Skarner, given that they were willing to leave it up. The other thing that's being communicated to me here is that ISU really highly values this Varus. They banned it away on blue side in game number 1 to make sure that Peak Performers wouldn't be able to get it for Sage Wabe, and now they lock it in themselves as their first pick on red side. So going to be a big one for them. And here's Alorium continuing to defeat the memes day in and day out. He picks on up this Renekton. At least he's hovering it. Would not surprise me to see him grab it. He's been a big Renekton guy this season, and this will be his 4th game on it as he does snap it on up. The Jhin coming into the bot lane for Sagewabe could be one that he is plenty familiar with as well. ISU to round out the first phase of picks. What are they looking for here? The Cassante, a favorite of PCL's, one that they can grab for him into this Renekton.
Yeah, I like it. I think this Renekton also kind of pseudo denies that Aatrox pick potential, right? The Aatrox reset comp that ISU potentially could go for here. Jhin, snooze fest of a champion, right? Just kind of lane neutralizer, just makes it really tough to kind of get any advantages against. Has a really good kind of follow up and starts fights off with the curtain call, also with that root, right? But I now, what I'm expecting from peak performers, I need to see some like heavy mid lane damage, right? I need to see some really big DPS mage coming in for the side of Roberto here, and I really need to see something from peak performers that screams, hey, we've got the setup, we've got the tanks, we've got the CC, now we just need a ton of damage coming in here, as LeBlanc is going to be banned away from ISU here. And I like what ISU is doing. They're taking away a lot of these more tanky Bash Brother kind of support picks. The Alistar being removed. I could see the Rel being taken away off of the board here, or even the Leona. Typical pairings with the Jhin, I think, should be removed.
Definitely. And now with that LeBlanc banned away, looking like Meslo is going to continue to be the target here. What are they going to be able to end up forcing him on? He has been favoring those assassins quite a bit over the course of this season, and this might be the kind of comp where you want one when, like you said, you do have those pseudo resets with the Varus, with the Viego. The Nautilus is going to be the lock-in for Barlow. They are going to save Meslo's mid laner for last based on what Robbie selects. So currently looking through for Dardoch. He's glancing at that Braum. Hovered it last game, didn't end up taking it. And this Rel still going to be super powerful as a team fight starter if they do take it. Although I will definitely want to see a little bit more DPS from peak performers if they do snap up the Rel.
I mean, I really like the Renata hover, right? Triple melee. You've got Viego, you've got Cassante, Nautilus coming in. Like, that ultimate could really provide some nice zoning potential, but they are going to go lock in with the Rel, so they've got a little bit of buddy up with the Skarner and the Rel combination. Could this already be a takeaway rather than more of a, kind of just like, hey, I want to pick this? It is pretty good damage, right? Once you get that Malignance, and if you do go like the Shadow Flame build or whatever, maybe potentially Storm Surge, you could get a ton of damage going in here. But peak performers kind of have a bit of a tiny pick composition here, right? I think Renekton Ahri can get some really nasty dives going in. That's what they're going to lock in, but that's just going to leave Sylas open. I think there's a lot of good ultimates for Sylas to take away.
Yeah, it would not be a bad Sylas angle. The other big one is the Swain. Meslo's been a big Swain fan. He's been our #1 Swain player in the Aegis Champions League. It's him and Zamudo, the only ones really playing this champion, and he will snatch it up. 3rd pick in the ACL for mid lane Swain for Meslo. And he will be looking to punish what is a short range composition out of the peak performers to its fullest using this freshly changed Swain. My boy just teased in the last episode of Arcane. For those who haven't seen it yet, I don't even think that counts as a spoiler. That's just a little cameo for you. Definitely get excited to see him in here, though. He's going to be getting some buffs when that next league show comes out. I'll tell you that much.
Is it bad that I haven't seen Arcane season 2 yet, Gordo? I've been waiting. I'm waiting on my partner to come in and we can watch it together.
That's fine. Sorry for the spoiler there, Shivy, but
darn, who could have guessed that they would have teased another League of Legends champion at the end of their massively popular League of Legends show here? But Swain does slap in this composition, right? Short range, like you mentioned, on the side of peak performers. The fact that Swain can get off multiple demonic ascensions or demonic flares here with his R button, he can just keep clicking it. He can just keep going as much as you are in that range. As long as one guy is within that circle, it's going to be really tough, especially if he opts in for Rylays here as well. How do you run away from an ulting Swain here? Like, you've got to slice and dice out. Jin's not going to have a happy time. Like, it is kind of tough here. Peak performers as well. I would argue, lacking on the damage side as well. Like Renekton, Ahri, a lot of good front-loaded bursts, but if this fight goes past maybe 10 seconds, ISU just kind of win, right? They just kind of take over with the Varus, with the Swain, and the Viego here. Really, really crafty composition. I'm glad that they opened up that red side mid lane counter pick for Meslo here. And the fact that this Ahri kind of felt like a pseudo takeaway as well as a Robbie Bob special, the Swain just being slotted in kind of completes ISU's composition and really puts peak performers, kind of under the gun here.
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, playing against the Swain, especially the new Swain, where you get to cast Demon Flare multiple times if you are able to keep the ulti running long enough. I mean, there's not really a good way to counterplay it when you have a composition like what peak performers have drafted here. Alorum, Kitsuo, Dardoch, these guys cannot choose to not be in Swain ultimate range. You have to be in there who needs to, or you need to be in there to be able to participate, to be able to do anything, to be able to use any of your abilities. And that means Meslo going to be draining you and going to be a massive issue.
Yeah, Kitsuo as well. Like, if he, like, can you imagine like ulting Swain while he's ulting? Like, it's not someone you want to grab up, right? And Makel should be relatively safe here. There are options for like where Robbie Bob can kind of slide around, get an errant charm here. Maybe Sage hits a nice route onto Makel, but like, yeah, Meslo is the big issue. How do you deal with this guy? My best option, I think, if I'm peak performance, is try to fight away from Meslo, right? Attack side lanes, figure out if Makel is playing a little too far up, right? Which he has had a penchant for doing. At least in game one, you saw him kind of overextending a little bit, not respecting the engage distance of champions like Ashe. Robbie Bob on this Ahri, very similar, right? In a moment's notice, can get 2-3 screens in and really just punish potentially Makel, who is looking to overextend, who is looking to overextend sometimes on this AD carry position. So I think there are ways for peak performance to kind of leverage some of their champions, but it is tough. This Swain pick, like we said, it is very, very good because you can't not fight into a Swain on this peak performers composition if it's a straight up 5v5. You've got to attack side lane, you've got to attack PCL or Makel here and just force these numbers advantages.
Yeah, you really do. I just want to see them try to accelerate the game. Particularly, I want to see Alorum get ahead. I mean, Robbie Bob is definitely the go-to, right? You want to get this Ahri rolling, and that's been the keys to the game for peak performers throughout a lot of the season, but especially the postseason. And to do that, you're going to need to see successful ganks out of Kitsuo. The Skarner, maybe not the most adept at ganking mid, but I want to see them try to pair up and get into that top lane, get into that bot lane, get some advantages early on, like you said, and find a way to snowball some of these really more snowball-y centric champions. If you're not able to take advantage of the corner pick to be able to do that, I think it's going to be a real big problem for you coming into the later game. You're just not going to be able to compete up against some of the scaling power that these ISU carries bring to the table.
I do think Meslo will have a bit of a tough time, at least in that early laning phase. I think Kitsuo and Robbie Bob can really kind of abuse him pre-6, even post-6, right? If he's still laning. Yeah. If Robbie Bob has like Lost Chapter plus potentially the beginnings of that Malignance, and they can get that really nice gank onto Meslo. Let's say he's pushed up a little too far forward, or you've got Kitsuo hitting level 6 on the Skarner, drag him into turret range. Like, there are a lot of good opportunities for Kitsuo and Robbie Bob in this mid 2v2 or even in this 2v1 to kind of punish Meslo and set him back a little bit. Meslo on this Swain does need time to scale, is very gold dependent on this champion, regardless of what build we end up seeing, whether it's the Riley's Rush or the Malignance or Roa. I know we've seen a ton of different builds for the new Swain is dropped. All of those builds require a ton of gold here, and Swain has just kind of been one of those gold-hungry champions, where Robbie Bob on this Ahri really hard spikes on that Malignance and just can look to cause havoc across the map, especially when you have Sage Wabe on this Jhin. Him roaming down to bot lane in a matter of 5 to 6 seconds can really light up Makel and Barlow here if they are playing just a little too far forward. So I want to see what Robbie Bob can do on this Ahri. It's one of his signature champions. He's made his name on this pick, and if I'm confident in anybody picking this Ahri, it's him.
Definitely called it out earlier in the series, but it remains true, and in fact I would even say was demonstrated in game number 1. One of, if not the best mid laner we have here in the Aegis Champions League. You know, I'm sure Dark Wings and Samikin and folks are going to have some pushback on that, but he's easily able to contend with some of the NACL level talent that we do have in this league, and has really been showing it throughout even the regular season, but especially the postseason. So very interested to see what he's going to be able to do on this RE. In my opinion, he is the key focal point of this composition, and if he's not going to be able to find success, then I think we're going to be going to a game number 3.
Yeah, but Peak Performers have been known to pull magic out of their hats here the same way that they did in game 1, as ISU had a pretty good grip on Gamewood, right? Like, I saw a couple people at least like saying like, wait, how did Peak Performers win? They just got aced. Well, that's just kind of how it works sometimes here. So Peak Performers do have a penchant for kind of flipping the game pace on its head here, and I don't know if actually ISU is properly equipped to handle that, especially because they did take that loss to the Guangdong Flying Tigers as well. Like, nice rock there from Kitsuo. I think Peak Performer is one of those teams that's kind of awkward to play against, right? Kind of puts you in the mud, gets you into the dirt, and makes you wrestle around with them.
Yeah, here's that delayed invade though. Music, pushed back away, has to avoid that crash down. That's another rock for Kitsuo. Really getting some of those rocks in early on for the faintest of little advantages. There's no way you take Mana Flow Band on this Skarner, but counts for something. It's a bit of an emotional victory. And you do get that vision on Music as he starts off with these birds. So that's going to count as a real victory as well.
Yeah, and we do see PCL kind of walking in here, spotting out Kitsuo. Let's see if he's actually going to try to mess with him a little bit. He isn't. He's like, no, minions are important, guys. But both junglers being spotted out on the top side of the map here. I think keeping track of Music, super important so he can't snowball, as Barlow is just like Q on in there, and there's not too much that Peak Performers bot lane can do against it.
Definitely finding some of that good damage. PCL pulling back in Alorum for the level 1 exchange. Music on this late invade steals away a wolf. And now brawling with Kitsuo, though Kitsuo's calling over Robbie Bob, wants the fight. Alorum finding a good trade with PCL on the top side. And it does look like Music was able to fight his way out. Now the bot lane's getting involved, though. Sage Wabe solo in the 2-on-2. One arrow nearly takes him down, but not quite able to get the damage that they need. But that's going to be a forced recall out of Sage Wabe, who does not have the teleport, so he's going to be out of this for a while.
Yeah, Sage Wabe, balls of steel there, right? Holding the flash, right? Just chugging on potion, saying, nope, you definitely don't have enough damage to kill me here.
The Varus expert.
Really? Yeah, I mean, just really understanding champion damage down to the minutiae. Both Alorum and PCL, haymakers across back and forth here, but Music getting that crucial camp steal, right? Yoinking that wolf away. PCL!
Flash in from Alorum, gonna force the flash out of PCL and really starting to take control of this lane in the early game for the Peak Performers. And definitely going to need to as well, as Music already starting to make his mark in the early stages. Mako and Barlow clearly winning out on the bottom side. I know it's only 3 minutes in, Shibby, but definitely do not want to see every lane starting to lose out on trades if you're Peak Performers.
Yeah, and Kitsuo eventually calling in Dardoch just for some little extra support, like maybe if Music fancies another jungle invade, definitely doesn't want his red buff yoinked, as they do spot him out on this bottom rift scuttler, but he is able to take that out. They push Music out here, but Music is probably just going to channel a recall, channel a reset, and dutifully start farming his Krugs on that top side.
Meslo was forced to flash there as the charm came out of Robbie Bob. Was definitely making himself look enticing there as he's face tanking the full Sith Lightning. But Barlow coming in for an engage, going to be able to force the flash out of Sage Wabe. That's the payoff for having held your flash earlier. Otherwise, that would have certainly been a kill and a first blood going over to Music.
Yeah, and because Music invested a little bit more time onto that bot side play, Kitsuo has yoinked away Raptors on the respawn because Music started it first, and he should be able to take away these Krugs here. So overall, net camp lead for Kitsuo because of that extra little time investment from Music. So really good heads up play from Kitsuo. I love seeing those micro advantages being leveraged on the side of Kitsuo on this Skarner, who definitely is going to need it.
Definitely. Robbie Bob taking a big chunk there in mid lane, and more permanent health stacks going over to Meslo, so good job on him. landing those never moves, but double collapse coming in towards Music, going to use his movement speed to get away. Hooked underneath the turret is Dardoch, and first blood to the ISU bot lane as a fight breaks out on the opposite side. Kitsuo going to be able to finish off Music, and PCL now has the crocodile all over him. Lorum needs one tiny bit of damage more, but can't quite find it. Will Robbie Bob go in for this dive? Tanks one tower shot, tanks the second. Kitsuo coming in with the dive. He's going to die to BCL, but he gets the kill to Robbie Bob. We'll call that one even.
Why did we supercharge the turret shots? 2 turret shots in a row, and then you just tanked the third, like, mega turret shot? A little bit tough there.
What if he's trying to lock in the execute?
Yeah, maybe, potentially here. I'll say net benefit play for Peak Performers on that top side, as PCL is going to miss a good chunk of that wave. Fast back for Kitsuo, let's call it. Let's call it a fast back, as a bit of a hectic top side and bottom side for both of these teams here. Nerves potentially getting to both of them.
Definitely. A lot on the line here. ISU getting a good start for themselves in the bot lane especially. Makel and Barlow, despite the former being a substitute on the day, certainly putting up a good showing up against Sagewabe and Dardoch. And this game number 2 is Kitsuo coming on up to try to challenge for these grubbies, but 2 of them have already fallen over to the Redbirds. Kitsuo looking like he'll be able to secure the third, as the backup is not quite here in time.
Yeah, and the collapse comes in from Peak Performers, not giving the 3 away. Oh, Dardoch!
Oh, here's a big punish coming on through. Dardoch looking to be able to get this fight started, but the Swain ultimate's already been popped. Here comes Demon Flare. He's going to get that more than once, unless Robbie Bob can melt him down in time. First reset of the fight comes through for Music, backing on away as he chucks in some rocks. Alorum falling low, looking for the reset is Music. He will get it, taking over the croc, diving into the back line, getting himself a second one. Robbie Bob, though, still resetting, and it's the stars of each team as the last one standing in a 2-for-2 brawl. No clear winners.
And you saw Meslo, unfortunately, even though he popped the Swain ultimate, cleanse from Sagewabe there, just not tanky enough to tank on all this Peak Performer damage there. But Music was getting good resets going, got enough damage down, but Robbie Bob, like you mentioned, in the thick of it, resetting with some of these ultimate points. As get a replay here, a really aggressive flash Q from Dardoch, but you just look, Meslo unfortunately isn't tanky enough. Robbie Bob slides in onto the side, gets a massive Q onto multiple members here, and like you said, 2 stars, both Robbie Bob and Music, kind of just hard carrying these fights. I think the fact that Alorum stayed alive a little longer than what was expected from the side of ISU, right? He gets that massive Call the Meek. Alorum stays alive. That allows Robbie Bob to pick up more resets. And both of these teams walking away with crucial gold in their pockets, but specifically, Robbie Bob has 3 kills to his name.
Yeah, that was absolutely huge. It was more kills to ISU at the end of the day, so they did get 3 for 2. So it's a faint advantage over to them, but the fact that Robbie Bob is the one picking all these up, definitely represents a big advantage for them. Getting a 3-0 and 2 Ari out onto the field at 8 minutes and 30 seconds is a huge piece of the Peak Performers puzzle that they need to solve to be able to come up with this win and take this series in 2. ISU already making their moves for Dragon number 1, which still has not been taken at this stage. PCL still duking it out with the Croc and not having a fun time doing it.
Yeah, Alorum just kind of taking him to school a little bit, right? Game 1 on the Malphite, game 2 on the Renekton, as Robbie Bob's going to slide in. Misses the charm here, and he's really close to that Malignance, right? He should hit like a 10-minute Malignance here, which is very good, and he's going to spike super hard here. So if Peak Performers can delay this Dragon until Robert hits that Malignance spike, or even if they can just take it here as that ultimate does get invested, could be rough. Although ISU...
Oh, big charm onto Meslo. After doing such a good job to deny kills off that ultimate, he gets himself chunked out, and he's out of this fight already. Peak Performers should be able to claim Dragon number 1 here. The absence of the Swain going to be huge.
Yeah, that big chunk is going to absolutely allow Peak Performers to get in to this Dragon side, although they are a little bit hesitant to pull that trigger. Meslo's TP not up in time. Is he just going to be able to walk it back here? it doesn't seem like Peak Performers actually care too much about this Infernal Dragon. They would much rather go for plates in the mid lane, get some control down, potentially set up for this second spawn of grubs that's coming in, which I don't actually necessarily disagree with. More gold into Roberto's pocket, gets him that Malignance, and now he's a force to be reckoned with.
Definitely a huge purchase for the Ahri in the mid lane as the junglers are duking it out. Kitsuo has to flash away from Vision of Empire. Stun doesn't connect until Kitsuo's already over the wall. And this Skarner is home free, but showing the brawling power that this Viego does bring to the table in these isolated situations, and already bringing over Swain here, looking for a fight onto Alorum. He is outnumbered and outgunned all of a sudden. Doesn't quite get snagged by the Never Move. Is going to be able to flash away. Kitsuo going to be able to dive forward. Here comes the Swain ultimate though, and the resets are coming on through. First kill over to Robbie Bob, but it's traded back by Music.
Here.
So far, Music flashing in, getting the stun into the wall, but finding Dardog. Meslo flashing in to be able to find that kill. Music going to be able to get a second reset of the fight. A pull back in. Charm doesn't connect, but he doesn't need it. Music is on a killing spree as that's a 3-for-1 fight back over to the Redbirds.
Oh, and it looked like such a good fight for Peak Performers, but ISU on this Swain, specifically Meslo, we talked about it. You can't just not fight into the Swain, especially if you are such a short-range composition like Kitsuo, like Alorum is on this Renekton Skarner. Just unfortunately too much damage, and the fact that Music began to reset across the fight faster than Robbie Bob nets ISU that win, and it's going to net them those 3 extra grubs here. Going to put them at a 5-1 split against Peak Performers. You can already see Peak Performers composition having some difficulties against Swain.
Having some difficulties against Swain, but I also want to highlight a big play there by Music, that flash Ishtal's impact into the wall, showing the flexibility he's got when he gets to pick up different champions on this Viego, and a massive play by him to shut down the big damage threat that Ahri was. Big play by him, and keeps ISU dead even in this game. Heartsteel, of course, being completed by Kitsuo there.
Yeah, and you know, it's a pretty interesting strat, right? Leave Skarner open so that my jungler can also potentially play Skarner when he takes over as Viego. I like that, right? Z-tier jungler trade, as Peak Performers is still up in gold just a hair here, but ISU seem to have stabilized. They are gonna end up giving this Infernal Dragon over to Peak Performers, finally taking it at the 12.5-minute mark. We're going to get a very delayed Dragon Soul here. Bare minimum at the 28-minute mark is we're going to see a Soul if any of these guys end up taking Dragons on time here. Is Alorum.
Ultimate popped there, using the Dominus to try to stay alive, but he's in a 4-versus-1 situation, and he will not last long. Falling on down, kill credit going over to Music.
And we saw some pings potentially going down onto PCL here, but it's much harder to dive Cassante, especially because he has completed that Frostborn Gauntlet, much tankier on the side, and there's always potential for you to get flung across the map into the turret, or, you know, into the grubs here, or the Gromp, sorry, as it's a lot tougher to dive that Cassante. I think they're able to get a plate for Robbie Bob in the mid lane, but just look at what ISU's doing, right? They've kept Mako down here as well as Music, and they're just hammering away at this turret. Attack speed Varus and the rest of the gang are going to shred this down pretty quickly.
Wow, pulled underneath the turret. Kitsuo taking way too much damage. PCL going to be able to finish him off. So first turret, another kill. ISU coming up with cash outs across the board.
Yeah, really, really good, you know, allocation of resources, I'll call it, for ISU, right? Sending through the top side, using that advantage, using the players you have to take that turret down, as well as PCL coming to that mid lane. We talked about how tanky he was. Took like half health, right? Even though Kitsuo and Robbie Bob dropped their complete spell rotation onto him. Alorum trying to get some gold back onto that bottom side. We'll see. He should be able to pick up that turret if he tries to go for it. No collapse possible. I don't know if Meslo is going to be able to actually win this, but he invests the ultimate. Could be tough for Alorum.
Definitely could be. Alorum going to get pushed away. Retreating back on over as now The Rift Herald has spawned on up and is in the sights of both teams. Charm connects onto Barlow, and that will be how they start off the fight. Sagewabe should be able to finish him off, no problem. Dardoch the one walks away with the kill credit, but Music is now looking for the resets. Flash away from Dardoch to dodge the Heartsbreaker, but it's going to be a kill on a Kitsuo regardless. Music finds his reset. It's a 1-for-1, and ISU are the ones left with control over the river.
It was a good look, a good trap from Peak Performers, right? Only Kitsuo was spotted on that scuttle, so Barlow thought he was a lot safer here. That charm lands, tons of CC and abilities go down onto him, but unfortunately they don't have enough for the ensuing re-engage. As ISU, with that kill, are going to be able to pick up the Herald here, so majority topside objectives in their favor. Now we'll see if they can leverage that Rift Herald into some much needed tier 2 gold. Someone like Meslo. Alorum's fine. I think he's okay. He's just having a little bit of difficulties, right? A
little bit of a struggle there for Shuyer. Welcome to everybody from the Salt Mine. I assume that means AoE 2-0 over on their stream. We are just getting into the deeper part of game number 2 here. Peak Performers up against Illinois State. ISU, though, getting themselves ahead in game number 2. They did this in game number 1 as well, though, Shivi. It wasn't quite enough for them to be able to close it out.
Yeah, I think Peak Performers do still have similar tools to kind of jump onto the quote-unquote carries here, although Meslo on this Swain, not as easily collapsible, right? He's not on something flimsy like a Corki. He's on that flex tape, right? The Swain here, not really able to kind of die instantly as he does pick up that Riley, so he's even beefier, right? Malignance plus Riley is a really good 2-item power spike for the Swain here. Has complete dominion over this dragon that is going to pop up in about 1 minute and 15 seconds. And with Peak Performers composition, like you mentioned, Gordo, you can't not fight into the Swain. It's super tough. And now that he's got Riley's, good luck running away from him.
Whoa! Barlow was fishing for a little something on the Dardoch there. Didn't quite connect it, but the Rift Herald's coming on through. And Chains of Corruption has found Sagewabe. He has to flash away. The Herald is being taken all the way in, but Mako has fallen down. Music does not find his man and is left 1,000,000 miles away from the fight, as there's going to be that sting coming through on a Meslo. Still draining on through with the Demon Fire. Knocked back by Dardoch. Barlow going to be the first one to fall. Meslo is dealing so much damage, though. A shutdown is found. He's going to have another recast of the ultimate soon. It's a double kill. There's another slow. He keeps advancing forward, looking for the triple, but the tower damage is going to start to turn back onto him. Robbie nearly takes him down. One more Q. One-on-one. Meslo comes up huge on the Swain. It's a quadra kill to the ISU mid laner.
It doesn't matter if your jungler failed his driver's license tests, because Meslo is strolling down mid lane in the Ferrari as this fight, absolutely weird start here. I thought they were going to charge us into the mid lane. Instead, Music pivots. He goes for the potential knockup, absolutely whiffs it, and Makel's tanking the turret, right? Like, that's tough. But all the meanwhile, Meslo pops the ultimate, and unfortunately, you can't not fight into this. The Rileys makes it super difficult. Really good flank from Robbie Bob, but the fact that Meslo and Music are able to dominate this team fight, all the meanwhile, Alorum's TP gets interrupted, so they don't get that man advantage. And just look at Meslo on this Demonic Ascension. So much damage over time here. Multiple casts of that R, and unfortunately the man is just too damn tanky, Gordo.
You know what they call Swain, Shivy, back before he was the Grand General Anoxis, the Master Tactician. All planned out by Meslo, from the botched Rift Herald to the dying of his AD carry to the tower. All planned out from the start, all to lead into this kill onto Kitsuo, as well as that quadra kill into Meslo's pockets. And he is absolutely massive in this game. ISU, that dominant fight to put them back in the lead. And now not slowing down. Music finds another stun onto Dardoch. Mako raining down damage over the wall. The knockup's going to come on through, though. Barlow been turned back around on. Robbie Bob is here, and you know who's not? It's the Swain that made the difference in the last fight. I've caster cursed him, Shivy. ISU lose 3 for absolutely nothing, and Robbie Bob's not slowing down.
Really, really good look from Peak Performers. They spotted Meslo on that top side, so that's a fight they can take. We talked about the only way of beating him is to fight away from him. Do they have enough damage to 3 here? Zanya's getting popped.
Oh my god, Meslo's trying the 1 versus 3. He's feeling himself after that last fight, but I think this might be more than he can chew. He's trying to drain through it. He's got the shielding from PCL. He pulls back in. Musage Wabe gets himself the double kill, spacing out from Robbie Bob, but Robbie is still standing and he'll be able to get out of here with his life. PCL's fallen on down. It's a 2-for-1 so far. ISU lose out on the trade, but not quite as badly as they could have.
Oh my lord, Maslow with the 1v3. Holy man, that guy is a force to be reckoned with. Has completed the Zanyas as well. He was just on arm guard, by the way. So this guy is a tough cookie to crack. As the rest of Peak Performers, they messed around and found out. They poked and prodded Meslo. They woke up the beast and like, wait, we actually can't take him down 1v3 here. Best strategy for Peak Performers right now is to just fight away from him. Find him on the side lane, spot him out, and be like, okay, he's on top side. We've got 5 to 6 seconds to potentially get these kills onto Barlow, onto Makel here. I liked what Peak Performers did in that early jungle fight. They just unfortunately do not have the champions equipped to deal with Swain here.
And this is where we're really going to have to look at the game of inches and see just how close this is. Robbie Bob, 10 pages in the Magi's Soul Stealer. If he dies in that last fight with Meslo, where he's at 50 HP, he's actually so far behind, he loses out on the movement speed buff, but he does manage to hang on to it here, and that might be a big difference maker. Is he needs to be that big force for the Peak Performers. He needs to be able to find these picks for the team. He needs to be able to isolate out targets like the Swain or the Viego before they can start resetting and being a huge problem in these team fights.
Yeah, I think kind of the unsung hero for Peak Performers has been Dardoch, right? Hitting some massive Magnet Storms, right? 2 3-man Magnet Storms onto all the right targets. And Robbie Bob's not even playing a bad game necessarily, right? Both these mid laners, Meslo and Robbie Bob, having a fantastic game too. It's just Meslo's champion is fundamentally better into Peak Performers, as Alorum and PCL are going to duke it out here. Ultimates get invested.
Yeah, the top laners do not want to be left out here. PCL and Alorum duking it out. Very close fight between the two, but Alorum comes out on top as the fight breaks out on the top side. A sting connects onto 2. Kitsuo holding them in place, but the damage is just not coming through fast enough. Mako gonna be able to find the first kill on towards Dardoch, and ISU successfully push back the Peak Performers.
Yeah, that fight was done the moment Meslo clicked the R button there. Unfortunately, not enough damage, like you said, getting onto Barlow here, and Alorum did win that 1v1, is going to stifle that Baron potential from ISU. As he's pushing down that bottom lane here, has forced a response from the master tactician that is Meslo right now. So kind of got to just see where Peak Performers, they're trying, right? They're going for it, and I respect it. You have to, right? You've got to go for those slide in, charm into Rel, Magnastorm into kills here. But it just feels like Sage Wabe does not have enough damage here. He's even opted in for the Collector IE. I think even if he finishes his 3rd item, which either could be that rapid fire cannon, or even potentially, now we're going to see him potentially build into that Mortal Reminder. I don't know if it's enough. I just feel like slowly but surely ISU is getting tankier and tankier, and Peak Performers just cannot keep up with the damage curve.
Oh, they certainly cannot. At least it's feeling like they cannot, as Meslo going to get charged here. If he gets one shot without being able to ult, he doesn't have it. It's still on cooldown. He goes into the stasis, but Kitsuo's going to be waiting for him with a massive impale. Robbie Bob is over the wall, takes down his lane opponent, but PCL going to be able to strike back on the opposite side. Mako able to find some good damage through onto the team, but Alorum has one shot a target onto the back. Here comes Robbie Bob, but he doesn't have any more ult charges left. It's a 2-for-1 in favor of Peak Performers as they take control of the bottom river and this 3rd dragon.
Can't press R if you're not allowed to play the game here.
Curtain call. 1 shot, 2, 3. Barlow's down. Mako's flashed. Can't connect that last shot, but Alorum keeps the eyes on him. Now taking shots from the turret. Going back in. Jeez, Alorum playing with fire there, but he gets himself out.
Yeah, an Ocean Soul, the dragon of choice here, is Peak Performers are going to pick that up, work their way towards their second dragon here. A big team fight win for Peak Performers here. Chain CC after chain CC after chain CC. Meslo was cosplaying Silas there because that guy was just locked up, man. Like, could not do anything on the side of ISU. And you saw how dominant their fight looked afterwards, right? Robbie Bob resetting, Sage Wabe allowed to set up the curtain call and pick off low HP members. That's a dream team fight scenario for Peak Performers. They just have to do that, what, 2-3 more times before they win the game? I don't think Meslo's going to allow that.
Doesn't want to allow it for sure, but yeah, giving themselves that space to play with definitely going to be very valuable. But like you said, they have that composition that wants to be able to take these fights, and PCL's not slowing down. He and Music have found Alorum. They're looking to punish right away. Barlow over the wall, throws down the depth charge, and a long-range snipe from Makel will start off the fight, but now Music is getting focused down. He's going to end up dropping. PCL dives to the back line. He's taking down as well. It's 2 kills for 1. Peak Performers are the ones coming out on top, and here comes Robbie Bob finding his way onto Makel for a triple kill to Sage Wabe, and this Baron is all Peak Performers.
Meslo's here with Barlow. Can you 1v4 Meslo on the Swain? Ultimate gets popped.
He's got Dardoch for sure. Sage Wabe getting slowed up by the Rylai's as well. Robbie Bob without access to the ultimate, kind of lacking in the damage output. Here comes the curtain call, snipes down Barlow. Meslo gonna be the next target. Slowed down, charmed up, taken down. It's an unofficial pentakill to Sage Wabe, and the Baron buff to Peak Performers.
They just don't have enough damage. They've got Ahri and Jhin. Unfortunately, they don't have the ability to burst it down here, and Music could look for potential reset, so that's not going to get them the Baron, but that's a huge team fight win here. ISU feeling like they had to go for that team fight, or that pseudo team fight with Meslo and Barlow. I just feel like you can't fight. You can't make those plays on the side of ISU if your Swain isn't there, because look, they get so aggressive, then they get punished, right? And now Barlow and Meslo are like, all right, we've got to do something to prevent the Baron. We've got to stifle them. We've got to delay as much as we can. And yeah, you can on this ultimate from the Swain here. It's just not enough. There's so much damage. Look at Sage Wabe as well, playing outside of that Swain R range, the best of his ability. Good flash on the Nevermore, and then he just opens up the Blicky. 4 shots into Meslo, and that'll be it.
Another great fight for Peak Performers, and ISU continue to just get their hand too far into the cookie jar without access to Meslo. You need to have the big demonic ascension to back you up if you're going to be going deep into enemy territory like this. And they keep just finding that they do not have it. They index all their resources into this dive on towards Alorum without Meslo in position, and it costs them another critical team fight, and it costs them more and more control around the map. We have seen how ridiculous this Swain can be, but he doesn't need to be in these 1 versus many situations. You actually have just as many players on your team as Peak Performers do.
Yeah, I mean, it is a 5v5 game, right? You don't got to put everything on Meslo's shoulder. It looks like ISU have realized that as they go for this play here. Alorum is TPing on the backside.
Behind. Yeah, Alorum going to get this one started. Makel's going to be the focus. Robbie Bob going to be able to find 1, make that 2 right off the bat. Here's the Swain in the middle of everybody, though. Still deep in enemy lines, looking for his way onto Sage Wabe. That's actually PCL who's dumping out the damage, but he cannot find the fight. Music finally takes 1 as he drops, but it's a 4 or a 5 for 1. Ace. Peak Performers win another fight, and they're going to get the Baron.
That Skarner ultimate hits both Makel and I believe Barlow there. That was a really nasty reach, unfortunately, as we do get the replay coming in. Deep TP from Alorum traps them in between the waiting jaws of Peak Performance. And look at that Skarner ultimate. Right? What the hell was that? Makel gets snatched up, and the rest is history. Now, with all this gold that Peak Performers have amassed during these team fights, they're able to out-damage this Swain that's tanking them with that Demonic Ascension. And unfortunately, Swain is not that 1v4 machine. He might not even be the key to win these 5v5s. Gordo, if you take a look at the gold, Peak Performers is 8 bands deep right now.
They are mega ahead after winning 3 of those in a row. I mean, they just, ISU lost the plot a little bit, took some fights that they shouldn't have, and now they're in a disadvantaged position, and they need some of these crazy resets to come on through. But Barlow not going to be a participant in this next fight. He gets picked and taken out. Robbie Bob going to claim that kill, and now the Dragon should belong to them. They're going to get themselves on a soul point. Meslow's stuck topside.
Yeah, Meslo trying to work towards that fourth item. Looks like it's going to be a Leandri's here, or even potentially a Blackfire torch, but I don't know what item on Meslo wins them this next team fight. TP gets channeled. Robbie Bob and Alorum, they want to try him 1v2. They're jumping him.
Yeah, it's going to be Meslo picked off again. The massive Swain that was the difference maker the whole game long is off the map again. 3 dragons deep to Peak Performers. At least PCL gets out of that one, but that's just a little bit to earn back for your side, as Peak Performers are going to use this Baron and they're going to crack open this base.
Yeah, they hit down the tier 2 in the mid lane. Bottom lane tier 2 was already removed. They're going to work their way towards the top, very methodically amassing gold here and potentially setting up a trap. And Dardoch so willing to pull the trigger with Meslo down. This is a win team fight.
Yeah, it's a really nice stun up from Makel, trying to find his way to dish out the damage. But again, guess who's not here? It's Meslo. They are able to finish off that first kill onto Alorum, but now they've got to get themselves out of dodge. But instead, it's Mute deeper back, trying to use this Renekton, but he will be shot down where he stands. It's a quadra kill back to Sage Wabe. 14-3 on this Jhin, showing up in the team fights, and the Peak Performers are cracking open the ISU base.
That might be game here. Less a miracle from Meslo. He's got to clear the wave. He's got to ult. I don't know if he can do it. Flash for flash. Ban for ban. Can ISU hold it, or Peak Performers gonna take it 2-0, Gordo?
The dodges from Meslo are huge. He's gonna have ultimate back available here in just about a second. Barlow is re-engaging. There's the ultimate out of Meslo, but it's big PP energy coming out with the win at the end of the day, Shibby. Peak Performers 2-0 over the #1 seed in their group to stay alive in the Aegis Champions League.
Big PP energy. They take the Viagra, the Rhino pill. Man, they got the honey pack going as they get a 2-0 against ISU. Peak Performers, when their backs are against the wall, that's when they show up.
Absolutely huge for the squad here. ISU, another collapse from an advantage state. They take the lead there from 12.5 minutes until about 20, but they cannot hold on to it. And Dardoch and the Peak Performers come out with the win. But I should be saying, Robbie Bob, what a performance from him tonight. Huge play on the Azir, huge play on the RA, and Sage Wabe with a couple of massive games for himself as well. An unofficial Penta and an official Quadra to cement himself into top 8.
Beautiful, beautiful play here. And ISU, a dominant regular season into what can only be described as a horrific postseason collapse, right, Gordo? Like, this is well under probably their expectations, as well as the majority of the ACL watchers. To make top 8 bare minimum, and now they're bounced out. Peak Performers are here. They are real.
They definitely are. I mean, Peak Performers were seeded to get top 8. They were a tier 2 team. ISU were not seeded to get top 8. They switched identities during the regular season there, but now kind of falling back to where we had them in the preseason. Peak Performers, we always knew they were a team that could show up when it counted once it was postseason time, but what was not predicted, was this struggle from ISU after such a dominant regular season. It's like the wheels have fallen off a little bit here, but this team has higher aspirations than the Aegis Champions League, though. These guys, they want to be representing at CLOL. They want to be making deep runs there in the spring. This is the first step for them, and important that they were able to get this out before getting to the big stage later on.
Yeah. Really, really well played from Peak Performers. And we talked about some of their players just kind of, in enticing excitement, right? Robbie Bob, Sage Wabe. You've got obviously Alorum and Dardoch on this roster, albeit Dardoch on a different position, finding some massive Magnet Storms. It can't be overstated how well he played on this rel, in my opinion, and really set up 2-3-man Magnet Storms into those ensuing kills, right? Allowed both Robbie Bob and Sage Wabe to have the space to work through these fights. And unfortunately, as well as that Swain pick was, too many over-aggressive options, too many fights without Meslo would cost you the game here. ISU, a ton to review there if they do end up VOD reviewing, and I know Command Attack definitely has some words in for at least game 1 and game 2 there. Building blocks, right? At the end of the day, for a lot of these collegiate programs, this is a warm-up. This is to figure out now where the kinks are, where the issues are, so that when you get into CLOL, when it's time to compete for that national championship, you've worked all these issues through here. So I don't think this is going to be the last we see of ISU in any of these like higher tournament placings or any of these sort of high situation, high tense moments. They're a team that has a lot of potential, a lot of good pieces. Music demonstrated why he's such a good jungler this season, and I don't think a bad postseason takes away from that necessarily, especially because they are playing with a sub in that bottom lane. Makel, very good player in his own mind, but I think this series potentially goes different if Fatican is there, if they have their typical AD carry in that role.
Yeah, definitely a tough break for the ISU squad here, but huge for the Peak Performers to keep their lower bracket run alive and lock themselves in a spot in the top 8. We're going to throw it to a quick break here, but we will be back shortly with an interview with the victorious Kitsuo off of Peak Performers. We'll hear what he has to say here in just a couple of minutes, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody, to the Aegis Champions League, where we are joined by the victorious Peak Performers Kitsuo, fresh off a 2-0 victory against the first seed out of the Demacia group, ISU. Congratulations, Kitsuo.
Thank you.
So I want to start off by talking about that Demacia group a little bit here. You guys played against ISU back in week 5 of the regular season. It was a 2-1 win for ISU then. You guys handed them one of their 3-game losses of the regular season. Now able to come back and take the win here in the postseason to eliminate them right where it counts. What do you think was the big difference here from regular season play up until now?
I didn't play that match against ISU. I was busy that week. I was doing something, and then so we had a sub for that week. So I personally never got to play against ISU, and I think that's the biggest factor that went into this match.
All right.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about it because, like, a majority of your roster, right, been playing League for a very long time here. at some point when you guys fall into these like do or die situations, do you guys even feel any pressure? Like, is it just kind of like, all right, we're in lower bracket, let's just play our game, we understand how to win? Like, with a roster with such a huge amount of experience, like does the lower bracket really change anything for you guys in terms of like nerves or anything like that?
No, I mean, the reason we're in the lower bracket isn't because we're worse than these teams. The reason we're in the lower bracket is we're not performing on the day, and sometimes that happens. We understand that. So
Yeah.
but especially for me and Robbie, who I've been playing with for a long time now, like 3 years, um, we are so used to these high pressure situations. Like these don't even come up as high pressure situations. Like if you look at the last losers bracket match, after dropping the game one, we still just came back and got the victory pretty easily. Like nothing really shakes us nervous wise. Even like in the game one that we played today, where after we got the Baron stolen, like it was pretty easy for us to identify like this is what we need to do, like in order to win this game, and then just like execute on it. And we're like confident in our ability to execute. So that's just gonna lead us to the win every time.
Very good, very good. So if that's really where you guys draw the line on the wins versus losses, what do you guys attribute the tumultuous regular season to? Because there was some discussion there for a while about whether you guys would even be able to make playoffs. You end up 4-4, had a couple of little results gone differently, might have gotten into some tough tiebreaker scenarios. Do you think, were you guys just coasting, just chilling for the regular season, or do you think that something just hadn't quite clicked yet? What's the read on that inside the team?
So for me personally, I believe it was because I wasn't playing League that much at the time. Because I took like a 6 month break where I just barely played any solo queue or anything. So I was really just getting back into the game. And I think like when your jungler is weak, it's pretty hard to play. So getting back into the game, getting back into like the swing of things, and then just getting comfortable playing League again. Once that happened, then the games were pretty easy. Since then. Yeah, it was a tough ending. Like we really needed ISU to win against Next Level in order for us to make the playoffs, and it was looking really, really, really close. So in that last series, so we're thankful to them for beating Next Level, but I'm sorry I had to go down this way.
I do want to talk about a specific member of your team, Sage Wabe. I think he's. I've been had the pleasure of following his career since his debut way back in, I say way back, 2023 with Illinois. I mean, what does he bring to this team of veterans? I'm going to call it, as a player, right? Because I think this guy is absolutely insane. I think he's one of the best bot laners in ACL right now, in my opinion. So, like, what is it like playing with him and kind of, having a player like that on your team, especially like it's 4 veterans and then him, right? He is the guy with like the least amount of competitive experience by a huge amount.
So the only thing I knew about him going into the tournament is that he did really well in the OQs this year for summer, and he ended up being the one to knock both Robbie and Darnock out of the promotion tournament. So just from their words saying like, oh yeah, he's pretty good, I went into the tournament thinking like, okay, this guy's probably really good, and playing with him, he kind of is just really solid. Like he's like a rock kind of. Like I know he's never going to run it down. He's never going to end. Like you'll see games where like some of us like really be, especially me, like just be really doing these kind of out there decisions. But I know like no matter what happens on the rest of the map, or like even in his lane, like I know he's gonna be fine. Like he's gonna be able to perform and do exactly the job that we want him to do. And if he can always execute on that, the rest of us have like with our experience and stuff can incorporate that into how we're going to win.
Very nice, very nice. Well, so looking into lower round 3, you guys are going to be facing off against the winner of Polestar Straw Hat Crew. They started their series late, so they're probably still in game 1 right now. Any thoughts on that matchup? Anybody you'd prefer to face? Anybody you think you're going to face?
So looking at it, I think on paper, Polestar is the stronger team. And it's going to be another rematch. And it's going to be funny because I also wasn't the one to play the match against Polestar in our group. So coming into that match, I'm pretty excited but to play against like their veteran roster, quote unquote. But they have some really, really good names in there. And even like Chad Jungle, their junglers, he had Alarm as his teammate on when they were playing the NSCL. So I think it's going to be a fun match for both of us if we end up playing them.
Yeah, that was it for my final questions there, Kitsuo. Do you have any final shout outs? Anyone you'd like to thank? Anything, anyone special that was maybe watching or wasn't watching? Or do you have maybe any call outs to anybody? You want to trash talk a little bit? That's also accepted here.
So I mean, just shout outs to all the people supporting me and the team today, in the chat especially. I saw you Shogo. That's my goat. But yeah, obviously special shout out to Robbie. Played amazing today. Really kept us in those games. Alorm as well. Alorm was super good this time, and just all my teammates today. Again, like Sage Wabe was very consistent throughout the day, and he played really well both games, and Dardock as well. Like, so shout out to all my teammates, and then all of the people supporting us, and I'm sure you guys will see a lot more of us in the upcoming NACL split, or yeah, and Okies.
All right. Appreciate the shout outs there, man. Thanks so much for hopping on with us, Kitsuo, and congrats again on the win. Thank you to everybody at home for tuning in to the Aegis Champions League this week. We will be back on Friday with our next round, the upper bracket and lower bracket. So stay tuned to hear what the matchups are going to be here on Aegis, on the Salt Mine, and on our co-streamers as well. But that's going to do it for tonight's broadcast. We're going to send you guys over to the Aegis Defenders League, where they are currently going into game number 4, I believe. But for myself, Shibby here, and Caddy on production, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Shibby, for joining us, and we will see you guys next time.